Chapter 120. Yun Luofeng finally reacted to the eunuch's words. Her black eyes glanced devilishly at him and her peerlessly beautiful face lifted into a demonic and languid smile. However, this lazy glance caused the eunuch's body to tremble involuntarily, as if a bone-piercing chill had spread from his heart. This trash could actually make people feel such intense fear? Perhaps it was to calm the panic in his heart, but the eunuch's expression turned cold and he ordered icily, "Guards, bring these people into the palace. I can walk by myself." Yun Luofeng glanced at the guard who was walking towards her and raised his brows. "Yun Shao, if anyone dares to touch me, kill without mercy." Her voice was arrogant and unruly, filled with an evil and awe-inspiring aura, and it carried a domineering aura that looked down on the people of the world. Yun Shao did not say anything, silently standing by Yun Luofeng's side. Killing intent flashed in his cold black eyes and his black robes fluttered despite the lack of wind. The powerful aura radiating from his body forced the guards, who wanted to approach Yun Luofeng, to take a few steps back as shock filled their faces. "Humph." The eunuch humphed. "Yun Luofeng, wait until we reach the imperial palace. Let's see if you still dare to be so insolent." As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. This eunuch wasn't stupid. It was impossible for him not to feel the killing intent from Yun Zhao's body. If they really touched Yun Luofeng, he believed that this man would definitely start a massacre. Sure enough, there wasn't a single good person in the general's estate. From General Yun to the servant girls and guards, they were all a group of people who despised the imperial power. People like them should all be killed. "Grandfather, let's enter the palace and see how the emperor handles this matter." Yun Luofeng lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. The smile on his lips was filled with evil. "All right." Yun Luo nodded and turned to look at the eunuch, saying coldly, "Why aren't you leading the way? Who will be responsible for any delays?" These words had come from the eunuch's mouth, but now the old man had returned them to him. The eunuch snorted coldly again. He flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand and walked out of the courtyard. At this moment, the general's mansion was surrounded so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. When these people saw the group of people walking out of the general's mansion surrounded by a group of guards, they started to discuss among themselves. Obviously, they were all trying to guess what crime General Yun Luo had committed to be forced into the palace by a group of guards. Wasn't that right? Although these guards did not touch the Yun family members again, their actions of surrounding the Yun family members was no different from escorting them into the palace. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Yun family had committed a crime. Amidst the noisy crowd, Fang Ye stared at Yun Luofeng, who was surrounded by a group of guards. She was slightly stunned. After regaining her senses, she quickly turned around and hurried in the direction of the medical pavilion. "Elder Rong, something bad has happened." In the inner hall of the medical pavilion, Elder Rong, who was playing chess with someone, was thinking about how to move his chess piece when the sudden voice startled him. The chess piece in his hand fell to the ground. Just as Elder Rong was frowning impatiently, Fang Ye suddenly pushed the door open and hurriedly walked in. Perhaps it was because she had run all the way here, but her breathing was not smooth and her enchanting eyes were filled with anxiety. "What happened?" Elder Rong's frown deepened as he asked in irritation. If it were not for the fact that he had a good relationship with Elder Fang, someone as irritable as him would never have tolerated anyone barging in while he was playing chess. This was simply ruining his good mood. "Elder Rong, something has happened." Fang Ye looked anxious. "Just now, I remembered that the spirit-gathering elixir in our medical pavilion was almost sold out, so I went to the Yun family to look for Yun Luofeng, hoping to buy some more elixir from her. Who would have thought that I would see the Imperial Palace escorting her and General Yun into the Imperial Palace? Elder Rong, if you had been late, I don't think you would ever see her again." Chapter 121. What? Elder Rong slammed the table angrily and stood up. He glared at Fang Ye, who had reported the news, and asked through gritted teeth, "What did you just say? Have the imperial family eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall to dare capture Yun Lass?" Fang Ye wiped the sweat from her brow as her enchanting features filled with anxiety. "Elder Rong, I saw it with my own eyes." Not only has Lady Yun been taken away by him, even Ning Xian of the Ning family has been brought into the imperial palace by the imperial family. Hearing this, the anger in Elder Rong's eyes gradually subsided. Instead, a strange look appeared on his face. You said that the imperial family has kidnapped Ning Xian? Yes, Elder Rong. Fang Ye reported respectfully. Elder Rong slowly sat down and his lips curled into a disdainful angle. He then said disdainfully, "Is the imperial family looking for their own death?" Fang Ye, I remember that Elder Ning will be rushing to Long Yuan country today. Wait for him outside the city gates and tell him that his granddaughter and goddaughter have been kidnapped by the Dog Emperor and they are waiting for him to save them. Yes. Fang Ye joined her fists and her enchanting eyes flashed with a cold light. The imperial family could have kidnapped anyone. Why did they have to kidnap Yun Luofeng? Yun Luofeng was not only a benefactor to the medical court, she was also highly regarded by Elder Ning. Why would the Ning family let the imperial family off if they had kidnapped her? That's not right. Elder Rong suddenly remembered something and rose to his feet. He frowned. If that's the case, wouldn't I be giving Elder Ning the chance to curry favor with the Yun girl? No, I can't let Elder Ning have the upper hand in this matter. I must make a trip to the imperial palace. The main hall of the imperial palace was magnificent and majestic. At this moment, in the middle of the hall, Wu Ran was staring hatefully at the Yun family granddaughter and granddaughter. The murderous intent in his eyes was thick and sharp like a sword. The officials stood on both sides of the hall, not even daring to breathe as they glanced cautiously at the emperor, Gao Tu, who was sitting high up on the throne. Gao Tu's face was ashen as he stared coldly at Yun Luofeng who was standing in the middle of the hall. He spoke in a stern voice, "Yun Luofeng, why don't you kneel when you see me?" Yun Luofeng curled his lips. "My father had once asked for an imperial edict from you. The imperial edict stated that I do not need to kneel when I see anyone from the imperial family. Don't tell me you want to take back your order." Only now did Gao Tu recall the decree he had agreed to that day, and his expression couldn't help but turn even uglier. "How dare you!" Imperial concubine Mu was sitting next to Gao Tuesday. After hearing Yun Luofeng's words, her beautiful face immediately changed. Her lily-white hand fell on the table and she angrily shouted, "Who allowed you to be so rude in the main hall? Your decree was given by His Majesty, so you can naturally take it back." Yun Luofeng glanced at Imperial concubine Mu with a smile that wasn't a smile. If the Emperor intends to take back this edict, I, Yun Luofeng, have nothing to say. But if this reaches the ears of the common people, it will become His Majesty going back on his word. The reputation of the imperial palace will be swept 1,000 feet. Gao Tu's expression was somewhat impatient. He glanced at imperial concubine Mu and stopped her from speaking with his eyes. Then, his gaze fell upon Yun Shao and Ning Xian who were standing next to Yun Luofeng. He said in a cold voice, "We can allow you to not kneel and pay your respects. However, you guards and maids are far too lacking in etiquette. You actually dare to stand in the Great Hall. Kneel before us." His voice was dignified and domineering. It was filled with a chilly chill as it slowly rang out in the Great Hall. Yun Shao did not speak. His grim face looked as if he had been paralyzed from the beginning to the end. His dark eyes were forever fixated on the young girl standing next to him. It was as if he had not heard Gao Tu's voice and completely ignored him. Chapter 122. You don't have the right to make them kneel. In this quiet hall, the girl's demonic and awe-inspiring voice was like a stone thrown into the calm surface of a lake, stirring up waves. Gao Tu's face was ashen. With a bang, he fiercely slammed his fist on the table and angrily shouted, "Impudent! General Yun, this is the good granddaughter you've raised." He turned to look at Yun Luo with an ashen face. His voice was stern and cold. "Not only did you not discipline your granddaughter properly, you've caused her to become arrogant and willful by nature. She's lawless and out of control. Even her maidservant is a dog that relies on her master's power. She's actually crippled Wu Qi. Now that Master Wu has come knocking on our doors, the general's household must give an explanation." "Explanation?" Yun Luo laughed icily and rose to his feet. His elderly features were cold and stern. "Your Imperial Majesty, what kind of explanation do you want the general's household to give? Wu Qi had insulted my granddaughter and taken liberties with Ning Xian. He was delusional enough to snatch Ning Xian back to the Wu family as a concubine. Isn't he reaping what he sowed by being crippled?" Gao Tu's face sank and he scoffed icily. "General Yun, no matter how many wrongs Wu Qi has committed, the general's household should not have crippled him. Besides, the Ning Xian that you speak of is only a little maidservant. As a maidservant, she has the right to be someone else's concubine. As the heir of the Wu family, Wu Qi would never humiliate her." Hearing that Gao Tu had called Ning Xian a little maidservant just like the Wu family, Yun Luo's elderly features lit up with a mocking smile. "General Yun, as a meritorious minister of Long Yuan country, we do not wish to punish you." Gao Tu clearly did not see the mocking smile on Yun Luo's face. He calmed the anger in his heart and continued, "So, you don't have to worry about this matter. We will now issue an imperial decree to betroth this little maidservant to Wu Qi. Then, you can ask your Yun Luo Feng to apologize to Wu Qi. We will make the decision and let the Wu family forget about this matter. What do you think?" To Gao Tu, this was the best way to resolve this matter. She was only a little maidservant anyway. If the general's household needed her, he could send a palace maid to serve her. As for Yun Luo Feng, after all, she wasn't the one who did it. As long as he admitted his mistake, everything else could be discussed. A look of anger flashed across Ning Xian's face. This dog of an emperor had actually betrothed her to a scum. Moreover, she was going to be the concubine of this scum. More importantly, he actually said that becoming this scum's concubine wasn't a disgrace to her. He really thought too highly of himself. Just as Ning Xian was about to fly into a rage, a chuckle came from beside her. The young girl raised her eyebrows slightly. Her demeanor was languid and demonic. The corners of her lips curled into an arc and her peerlessly beautiful face lit up with a soul-stirring smile. "I don't know where your sense of superiority comes from. You can casually choose a marriage? Or do you think that because you are the emperor, all the power in the world is in your hands? But don't forget that there's always someone better than you out there. Not everyone is afraid of imperial power." Yun Luofeng's words were tantamount to declaring war against the royal family. As such, all the ministers were shocked silly by her. They stared at the young girl's beautiful face with their mouths agape. "Yun Luofeng, how dare you!" Imperial concubine Mu's lily-white hands slammed heavily on the table. A sense of disdain flashed across her arrogant eyes as she exclaimed disdainfully, "Everything under the heavens is dirt. If your Imperial Majesty wishes to bestow a marriage, who would dare to disobey? She's only a little maidservant. Could it be that someone of Wu Qi's status isn't worthy enough to take her as a concubine?" Chapter 123. Based on Imperial concubine Mu's status, she would naturally not be privy to the secrets of the mainland. In the eyes of these commoners, the imperial family is a supreme existence. In their own words, everything under the heavens belongs to the imperial family. However, only those with real power would understand that above the imperial family, there is a powerful controller. At the end of the day, the imperial family is only a puppet of that organization. Hence, when he heard imperial concubine Mu's words, Gao Tu's expression did not look too good. However, he only shot imperial concubine Mu a warning glance before turning to face the crowd in the middle of the hall. "Yun Luofeng, seeing that you are the only child of the general's household, we will not pursue your crime of disregarding the law. Now that your servant girl has committed a heinous crime, marrying her to Wu Qi as a concubine is already the most lenient punishment." Gao Tu raised his chin slightly, his dignified tone of voice leaving no room for doubt. "Hee." Suddenly, a light chuckle pierced through the air and sounded from outside the hall, carrying a hint of mockery. This emperor is truly awe-inspiring, choosing anyone's marriage as he pleases. Do you really think that you can make decisions on this mainland? As soon as he finished speaking, a green-robed old man slowly walked in from outside the main hall. His steps were light and quick. You could only see him take 2 steps, but his whole body was already in front of you. He was like a wisp of green smoke, so fast that it was impossible to see him. Grandfather. A sense of joy flashed in Ning Xian's eyes when she saw Elder Ning. She then walked towards the old man as a gentle smile appeared on her pretty and dignified features. Grandfather, you're here? Xianer, Elder Ning stroked Ning Xian's head, his eyes filled with affection. Tell grandfather, did anyone bully you while I was away? As he spoke, his eyes swept towards Gao Tu, who was seated high up in the hall, as if he was implying something. Grandfather, Ning Xian's face filled with grievance when she heard this. I've heard that Lin Feng's days in Long Yuan country have not been easy. I thought that it was an exaggeration, but today, when Lin Feng and I went to a restaurant for a meal, Wu Qi from the Wu family barged in and tried to make a move on Lin Feng. What do you mean by an exaggeration? Not only the Wu family would do such a thing, she could also exaggerate the severity of the situation. Sure enough, Elder Ning's expression sank, and his old face was overcast like the eve of a storm. After that, I couldn't stand the sight of those silk pants, so I made a move on them. Who could have guessed that Wu Qi would try to take me back and make me serve him? Ning Xian gritted her teeth and deliberately emphasized the word serve. Her clear eyes were filled with rage. Of course. How could I be willing to be taken advantage of by him? So, I crippled him. You saw what happened next. The emperor wanted to take revenge for the Wu family. He captured me and Lin Feng into the palace, intending to force me to marry that scum. He even said that I'm only fit to be his concubine. The more Ning Xian spoke, the more aggrieved she felt. She had been by her grandfather's side since she was a child. Everyone treated her with respect. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? But Gao Tu, not only did he force her to become a concubine, he even said that she was only fit to be his concubine. Elder Ning snorted coldly as a cold light flashed across his indifferent eyes. Xian, Grandpa has told you long ago that you don't need to show mercy to your enemies. How is it enough to deal with that kind of scum by crippling him? You should make him lose an arm or a leg and never be able to stand again for the rest of his life. Grandfather's teachings are right, I'll remember it. Ning Xian winked mischievously and replied with a smile. The grandfather and granddaughter's conversation, as if there was no one else present, had completely infuriated Wu Ran. His eyes glared at Ning Xian, as if he wanted to execute her by 1,000 cuts. Chapter 124. How dare you? How dare you trespass into the imperial palace? You're obviously digging your own grave. Wu Ran then turned towards Gao Tu and fell to his knees with a loud thud. He cried bitterly, Your Imperial Majesty, you must uphold justice for me. This little servant girl and this old man are looking down on the Wu family. They obviously don't respect your Imperial Majesty. This pair of grandfather and granddaughter should be executed by 1,000 cuts and their 9 generations should be executed. Execute my 9 generations? Elder Ning smiled calmly and replied calmly, I'm afraid that you can't afford to execute my 9 generations. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned his gaze towards Gao Tu and stood with his hands behind his back, looking indifferent. Even the people from the spirit sect didn't dare to say that they would kill their entire family in front of me. I don't know where the royal family gets their arrogance from to be so rude to me. You even call my granddaughter a servant girl? You even call her a concubine? Gao Tu's face, which was originally filled with anger, turned pale with a swoosh after hearing the old man's words. His eyes were filled with fear. Spiritual sect? He actually knows about the spiritual sect. Where did this old man come from? Spiritual sect? What's that? Imperial concubine Mu obviously did not know about the existence of the spiritual sect. She laughed icily and said, Do you think that the spiritual sect can be compared to the imperial family? The entire Long Yuan country belongs to the imperial family. Who would dare to disobey the imperial family's orders? Slap. Just as Imperial concubine Mu had finished speaking, a slap suddenly came from the side and landed fiercely on her cheek. She was dumbfounded and turned her head in disbelief towards the angry, handsome man next to her. Your Imperial Majesty, you. Imperial concubine Mu's beautiful eyes widened and filled with tears. Her beautiful face was deathly pale. On a normal day, she had relied on Gao Tu's pampering to become arrogant. From the fact that she was allowed to participate in politics, one could see her position in Gao Tu's heart. However, she never thought that the imperial majesty, who had always pampered her, would slap her. Gao Tu looked at the tears in imperial concubine Mu's eyes. He couldn't bear it, but when he thought of what she had just said, his anger rose again. He coldly said, "The harem is not allowed to participate in politics. This matter will be handled by us. You are not allowed to speak anymore." Imperial concubine Mu's body shook, and her beautiful eyes looked at Gao Tu in astonishment. Her eyes were filled with heartbreak and despair. Did His Majesty intend to take back all her power? Not to mention Imperial concubine Mu, even the people in the main hall were dumbfounded. They didn't understand why His Majesty would suddenly make a move. Is it possible that the Mu Jia will lose her favor? Just as everyone was feeling puzzled, Gao Tu had already turned his gaze towards Elder Ning. His expression was no longer as dignified as before, and there was a hint of inquiry in his voice. "May I know who this old senior is?" Old senior? His Majesty actually used such a word for this old man? A bad feeling arose in Wu Ran's heart. Could it be that this little servant girl had some other background? From beginning to end, Yun Luofeng had the attitude of watching a show. His lips curled into a demonic smile as he looked at Wu Ran, whose expression had stiffened. "You don't have the right to know who I am." Elder Ning's tone of voice was as calm as ever, but it revealed the cold arrogance in his heart. Gao Tu's face turned ashen when he was humiliated by Elder Ning in front of so many people. But before he could ascertain Elder Ning's identity, he did not dare to act rashly. Hence, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "May I know what relationship this old senior has with the Yun family?" Chapter 125. At this moment, Gao Tu no longer dared to think that Ning Xian was just a servant girl. Just based on the fact that this old man could silently appear in the palace hall, this kind of strength was not something an ordinary person could achieve. Elder Ning ignored Gao Tu and turned his indifferent eyes to Yun Luofeng. He smiled faintly and said, "Little girl, I didn't want to intervene in the grudges between you and the others, but now they've really crossed the line. I asked Xian Heir to stay here to protect your safety, but they actually humiliated you in front of Xian Heir. Since that's the case, I can't just sit back and watch." Elder Ning's eyes swept across the people in the hall and the corners of his lips curled up. "Who's Mu Wuxuan? Come out." In the hall, everyone looked at each other and looked at Elder Ning in surprise. They didn't expect Elder Ning to look for Mu Wuxuan first. One must know that Mu Wuxuan was different from the others. Not only was she talented, her medical skills were also outstanding. Her understanding of medicine even surpassed her master, Jing Lin. Even if this old man's identity was not simple, he couldn't casually offend a doctor with a bright future. After all, everyone has a time when they are sick, right? At this time, the value of making friends with a doctor was obvious. Mu Wuxuan is probably in the Prime Minister's mansion now. Yun Luofeng laughed and raised his eyebrows at Gao Tuesday. "Your Majesty, Elder Ning wants to look for Mu Wuxuan. I wonder if you can summon Mu Wuxuan here?" Gao Tu's expression changed. He shot a warning look at Yun Luofeng, a sharp glint in his eyes. However, he quickly retracted his gaze and said to Elder Ning, "Old senior, since you know of Wuxuan's existence, you should also know what kind of person she is. Wuxuan is elegant and dignified. It's impossible for her to offend Yun Luofeng. Everything was Yun Luofeng's doing. I hope old senior doesn't believe others easily and misunderstand a good girl." Gao Tu's words were obviously biased towards Mu Wuxuan and pushed all the blame to Yun Luofeng. In his opinion, a peerless and outstanding woman like Wuxuan would not provoke Yun Luofeng. It was only because Yun Luofeng admired his son, Gao Ling, that he hated Mu Wuxuan. Hearing Gao Tu's words, Yun Luo's heart grew colder and colder. The last bit of affection he had for Long Yuan country disappeared. In this life, he has been on the battlefield, but he can't compare to the Mu family's daughter. No matter how great the contribution was, it was nothing in Gao Tu's eyes. How could such an emperor be worthy of his loyalty? Elder Ning faintly looked at Gao Tu and said in a cold voice, I believe in my own judgment. Tell Mu Wuxuang to come see me immediately. Otherwise, this old man will absolutely not take things lying down today. Elder, Gao Tu took a deep breath, suppressing the anger that was about to erupt from his body. A cold smile flashed across his eyes. You are indeed very strong, but Wuxuang's medical skills are very high. It can be said that in the whole of Long Yuan Nation, or even the other nations, there is no one who is more talented than her in the field of medicine. Jing Lin even asserted that her achievements in the future would not be below anyone else. Offending such a genius doctor, what benefits would there be for you? Elder Ning was stunned. His eyes were filled with astonishment, as if he was deeply shocked by Gao Tu's words. What shocked him was that with Mu Wuxuang's medical talent, he actually said that no one can compare to him. And he even said that her achievements in the future would not be below anyone else. Should he say that these people were thinking too highly of themselves, or should he scold them as frogs at the bottom of a well? Chapter 126. Unfortunately, Elder Ning's shocked expression fell into the eyes of the others, and they thought that he was shocked by Gao Tu's words. Gao Tu's lips curled into a smile, and he continued, Senior, I don't know what your relationship with the general's mansion is, but Wuxuang's talent is indeed good. I believe that after Senior sees this child, you will definitely like her. As for the general's mansion, I can forgive them for Senior's sake. What does Senior think? Of course, if Senior wants to be on good terms with Wuxuang, I advise you not to get too close to the general's mansion. If it was in the past, Gao Tu would never say such words in front of the main hall. But now, he had completely fallen out with the general's mansion, so there was no need to continue pretending. Moreover, his royal family had the #1 expert, so there was no need to be afraid of the general's mansion. It was just that he wanted to use the name of the general's mansion to calm the crowd. Elder Ning regained his senses, and he indifferently looked at Yun Luofeng, with a touch of gentleness in his eyes. Little girl, these people don't know that you have medical skills? They actually said that Mu Wuxuang's medical talent is unparalleled? This is simply waving a big sword in front of Guan Yu. In front of you, they actually dare to flatter Mu Wuxuang. I think Mu Wuxuang can't even compare to 1/10 of you. Like 5 bolts of lightning striking their heads, everyone present was stunned by Elder Ning's words. Yun Luofeng has medical skills? How is this possible? She's just a waste, and this kind of waste actually has medical skills? Isn't this equivalent to a sow climbing a tree? Gao Tu's eyes looked at Yun Luofeng, then turned to look at Elder Ning, and asked, Senior is also a doctor? This old man wants to learn medical skills, but unfortunately, I don't have the talent. How can I be compared to Mu Wuxuang in your Long Yuan country? Elder Ning's face was indifferent, but everyone could hear the sarcasm in his tone. Gao Tu didn't mind his sarcastic tone, and said with a smile, Senior, since you're not a doctor, how do you know that Yun Luofeng's medical talent is better than Mu Wuxuang's? Mu Wuxuang's master, Jing Lin, is a highly respected doctor in our Long Yuan country. He has already seen that Mu Wuxuang's talent is very strong. In this case, Mu Wuxuang's achievements in the future will certainly be unparalleled. Elder Ning frowned as a sneer appeared on his indifferent face. As for Yun Luofeng, Gao Tu paused, then continued, she is indeed interested in medicine. Otherwise, she wouldn't have spent all of the general's mansion's savings to buy a bunch of useless herbs. However, it doesn't mean that she has the talent. Medical skills aren't that easy to learn. Some people won't be able to achieve much even if they spend their entire lives. The some people he mentioned were obviously referring to Yun Luofeng. Yun Luo looked at Gao Tu as though he was looking at an idiot. Even the master of the medical pavilion had come to seek treatment for his granddaughter. In the end, Gao Tu had actually claimed that his granddaughter would never achieve anything great in her lifetime. Are you guys done talking? Yun Luofeng lazily yawned, she shrugged her sore shoulders, and raised the corner of her lips, I'm a little tired. I've been standing for so long, and there's not even a chair. It seems that the royal family's hospitality is really not good. The two opposing sides quieted down due to Yun Luofeng's sudden interjection. Everyone's eyes fell on the girl, and their eyes were filled with astonishment. Chapter 127. At such a solemn time, she's actually complaining about the imperial family not giving her a seat? Does she not know that I'm the reason why these people are fighting? Elder Ning was also shocked and momentarily forgot what he was supposed to say. He stared blankly at Yun Luofeng. Only Yun Xiao did not think that Yun Luofeng had said anything wrong. In his opinion, the imperial family's way of treating their guests was not very good. They're not even willing to bring out a chair, hence, Yun Xiao's black eyes slowly turned away from Yun Luofeng and his grim gaze turned towards imperial concubine Mu, who was seated high above. What do you want? Imperial concubine Mu saw Yun Xiao walking towards her and shivered. Her shrill voice rang out, "Quick! Quickly capture this man and protect the imperial concubine. Protect the imperial concubine, protect the imperial concubine." Gao Tu was also frightened by Yun Xiao's sudden action and anxiously shouted out his orders. However, just as Gao Tu's voice rang out, the grim man's figure moved like a gust of black wind and quickly appeared in front of imperial concubine Mu. His speed was so fast that no one could react in time. The guards did not even have time to draw their swords. Thud. The man did not make any unnecessary movements. He pulled imperial concubine Mu off the phoenix chair and threw her on the ground. He then bent down to pick up the phoenix chair and walked towards Yun Luofeng, who was in the middle of the main hall. When Yun Xiao placed the phoenix chair behind Yun Luofeng, the crowd suddenly stirred. They stared in shock at the man's grim and handsome features and were deeply awed by his domineering actions. This fellow had snatched the imperial concubine's phoenix chair just because of one sentence from Yun Luofeng? Where on earth had the general's mansion managed to recruit such a domineering and sincere man? He was simply the most outstanding lover in every woman's eyes. Especially when this man was so good-looking. Unfortunately, his status was too lowly and he was only a guard of the general's mansion. Otherwise, countless women would have gone crazy for him. This chair isn't comfortable, but I can't ask for too much here, so I'll have to make do with it. Yun Luofeng slowly sat down and the corners of her lips curled into a demonic smile. She looked at the crowd with a smile that did not reach her eyes and said, "All of you, continue. Continue? Continue, you big watermelon. How are they supposed to continue their conversation after being interrupted by you?" Imperial concubine Mu felt very sullen. Her beautiful eyes glared hatefully at Yun Xiao, but because she had been slapped by Gao Tu, she did not dare to say another word. Of course, compared to Imperial concubine Mu, Gao Tu was even more furious. Now, even a small guard dared to look down on the royal family? Especially in front of so many ministers? It is not hard to imagine that from now on, the prestige of the royal family will plummet and they will be laughed at by everyone. Elder, Gao Tu suppressed his anger and looked at Elder Ning once again. "I hope you can consider my words carefully. With Wushuang's future achievements, I believe everyone will only be able to curry favor with her, so don't offend her. If it wasn't for Jing Lin's assertion that Mu Wushuang's medical talent was unparalleled, how could he be so biased towards Mu Wushuang? It was even more impossible for her to become the crown prince's consort. And if Mu Wushuang was really that powerful, with her existence, Long Yuan country would be even more powerful." "Your Majesty." A eunuch hurriedly walked in from outside the hall. He walked in front of Gao Tu, flicked his dust and respectfully said, "Reporting to Your Majesty, Elder Rong from the medical court has come to visit." "Someone from the medical court has come?" Gao Tu's eyes lit up. Even though the medical court refused to treat Gao Ling, the relationship between the medical court and the royal family was not bad. If Elder Rong from the medical court came, this old man would not dare to be presumptuous again. Chapter 128. "Quick, invite him in." Gao Tu sat upright, his face full of joy. He did not know what Elder Rong's arrival meant. After all, Jing Lin had suffered a great loss at the medical pavilion and did not have the face to tell the whole story. Otherwise, he would be the one who would be embarrassed. Therefore, Gao Tu had always thought that the medical pavilion did not treat Gao Ling because they were dissatisfied with Jing Lin for destroying the medical pavilion's finances and not because of the royal family. Just as he finished speaking, an old man in a white robe suddenly appeared under the scorching sun outside the main hall. This old man's white robe fluttered in the wind and he had the demeanor of an expert. Gao Tu recognized the old man's identity at a glance. Elder Rong. Gao Tu could no longer sit still. He stood up happily and a smile appeared on his handsome face. I don't know why you are here today. Even though Jing Lin has offended the medical pavilion, this has nothing to do with the royal family. I hope that Elder Rong can treat the crown prince. In Gao Tu's opinion, Elder Rong's appearance in the imperial palace must mean that he had forgiven Jing Lin for what he had done and intended to treat Gao Ling. Elder Ning sneered when he heard Gao Tu's words. Didn't you just say that Mu Wushuang's medical talent is unparalleled? Why don't you let Mu Wushuang treat him? Why do you need to ask someone else? As soon as Elder Rong walked into the main hall, he was stunned by Elder Ning's words before he could even say anything. Mu Wushuang's medical talent is unparalleled? If that's the case, what are the talented disciples of the medical pavilion? What's more, there's Yun Luofeng, a doctor who can't even be compared to the experts of the medical pavilion. How dare the royal family shamelessly say such words? It seems that he really came too late this time and missed a lot of things. Gao Tu's face was unhappy, but he did not dare to be angry at Elder Ning. He could only hold back his anger and said, Wushuang is talented but she is too young. There are many things that she doesn't know, so it's understandable that she can't treat him. Elder Rong's brows furrowed more and more. His gaze turned to the indifferent Elder Ning. Elder Ning, can you tell me what happened? Didn't I hear that Yun Luofeng and your little girl were captured by the royal family? How did it become something related to medicine? Could it be that the imperial family wanted to find Yun Las to treat her illness? That won't do. Not everyone has the qualifications to be treated by little Yun. Like a clap of thunder, it fiercely smashed into the crowd, causing them to tremble. Gao Tu, who had initially wanted to use Elder Rong's power to intimidate Elder Ning, was completely stunned. He stared in shock at the old man's furious face as his heart thundered and his body stiffened. What did Elder Rong mean? He came to the imperial palace for Yun Luofeng? And he dared to say that the imperial family had no right to be treated by Yun Luofeng? Could it be that Yun Luofeng really had medical skills? Gao Tu's face was completely pale. He did not react at all as he stared blankly at Elder Rong. His eyes were filled with shock. Elder Rong, you came at the right time, Elder Ning smiled. I heard that Mu Wushuang has been bullying Yun Las all these years and wanted to vent his anger for her. I didn't expect that the imperial family would say that Mu Wushuang's talent is superb and his medical skills are superb. His achievements in the future are not something that I can provoke. They also said that with Yun Las's talent, even if she used her entire life, she would not have any great achievements. I just want to ask, how have you been taking care of Yun Las for the past 6 months? Don't forget, Yun Las is the savior of your medical pavilion. Chapter 129. Elder Ning's words made Elder Rong feel ashamed. His heart was filled with guilt, but even more so was the rising anger in his heart. Humph. He snorted coldly and turned to look at Gao Tu, who was sitting high up on the throne. With a cold expression, he said, Gao Tu, what benefits did Mu Wushuang give you to make you so biased towards him? How dare he say that she has extraordinary talent? If she can be considered a genius, then Yun Luo can be described as an evildoer. Also, let me tell you something out of goodwill. My master was seriously ill and no one could cure him. It was this girl who cured him. How can Mu Wushuang compare to her? Gao Tu's body trembled, his face filled with shock. Yun Luofeng was really a famous doctor and had cured the illness that all the experts in the medical pavilion could do nothing about. How was this possible? He did not believe that this good-for-nothing would be able to make a comeback one day. Let me tell you something else. In this world, the only person who can cure jailing is Yun Luofeng. The corners of Elder Rong's lips curled up into a cold smile, completely ignoring the shock in Gao Tu's heart. At this moment, Wu Ran had already curled up in a corner. Her entire body was trembling as she tried to minimize her presence. Although everyone in the world believed that everything belonged to the emperor, there was only one person whom even the emperor would respect. That person was the old man from the medical pavilion. Especially when he said that Yun Luofeng was the medical pavilion savior. With this relationship, he would not be able to get away with it today. Concubine Mu did not dare to complain. She bit her lip and glared at Yun Luofeng out of the corner of her eye. You're saying that Yun Luofeng can cure the crown prince? Gao Tu was taken aback. He hurriedly looked at Yun Luofeng, his eyes filled with anxiety. That's right. But based on the current situation, don't think that Yun Luofeng can cure jailing. Elder Rong smiled coldly. Also, did you not hear what Elder Ning said earlier? Immediately summon Mu Wuxuang into the palace. I want the world to understand that the royal family is nothing. In the main hall, the ministers sighed endlessly. They were well aware of the status of the medical pavilion in the mainland. They also knew that even the royal family respected the medical pavilion. However, they did not expect that the royal family did not feel respect for the medical hall but fear. Right now, they were indeed like frogs at the bottom of a well. They only knew that the royal family was powerful, but they didn't know that there was an even more powerful existence above the royal family. Elder Rong, Gao Tu was a little hesitant. He frowned and said, even if Yun Luofeng has medical skills, that doesn't mean that her talent is greater than Wuxuang's. Perhaps it was just a coincidence that she was able to cure the people from your medical pavilion. Wuxuang's medical talent is recognized by many people. No matter what, Gao Tu was unwilling to believe that a piece of trash like him could have such influence. A bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well. Elder Rong glanced at Gao Tu disdainfully and said sarcastically, Mu Wuxuang's talent should be what Jing Lin told you. Can that guy's words be trusted? He was merely bragging about himself. 100 Mu Wuxuang couldn't even compare to 1 Yun Luofeng. I'll give you one more chance. If you don't summon Mu Wuxuang and Jing Lin, I'll personally go to the Prime Minister's residence. At that time, I don't know what will happen to the Prime Minister's residence. Your Majesty. Imperial concubine Mu screamed. Her beautiful face was deathly pale and her nails dug deep into her palms. Your Majesty, Wuxuang is innocent. It must be Yun Luofeng who framed her. Your Majesty, please help Wuxuang. Chapter 130. Innocent? Elder Ning coldly snorted, his indifferent face raised a touch of ridicule. I heard that more than half a year ago, the people of your royal family framed Yun Ruoyan, claiming that she robbed a handsome man on the street so that the crown prince would cancel the engagement with her. However, I found out that the person who deliberately framed her was the innocent Mu Wuxuang. The old man's words were like a heavy weight, mercilessly hitting concubine Mu's heart. She was shocked and her eyes widened, denying it. That's impossible. Wuxuang is a kind person, he would never do such a thing. Even though concubine Mu said so, her heart was not sure. Perhaps the world did not know Mu Wuxuang's true character, but she knew it very well. With Mu Wuxuang's character, he would definitely do such a thing. Guards. Gao Tu hardened his heart and commanded. Bring Mu Wuxuang to see me. Your Majesty. Concubine Mu cried out, she clenched her fists tightly. Wuxuang would never do such a thing, this is all a false accusation. If Mu Wuxuang's reputation was ruined, it would be extremely disadvantageous to the Mu Jia. She would never allow such a thing to happen. Beloved, you're tired, go and rest. Gao Tu looked at concubine Mu's pale face and lightly said. Obviously, he has been dissatisfied with concubine Mu's repeated rude words. Although concubine Mu is very much favored by him, he will not offend the medical pavilion for a woman. With Elder Rong here, the Mu Jia can only accept their bad luck this time. Concubine Mu's body trembled, she relied on Gao Tu's love for her in the past to plead for Mu Wuxuang, but before she could speak, the man's majestic voice sounded again. Guards, take concubine Mu away, without my order, she is not allowed to take a step out of the palace. Hearing this, on both sides of the palace, 2 guards stood up and respectfully cupped their fists. Yes, your Majesty. Concubine Mu's body softened and almost fell to the ground. She stubbornly supported her body and unwillingly bowed to Gao Tu, bowed and said. This concubine will take her leave. Her beautiful eyes were filled with pitiful tears. When she looked up, she couldn't help but look at Gao Tu again. After seeing that Gao Tu did not respond, she could only follow the two guards out of the hall. Elder Rong, I will send someone to bring Mu Wushuang, please wait for a moment. Gao Tu smiled. His tone was no longer as sharp as before. Instead, it was filled with a fawning tone. Elder Rong snorted and ignored Gao Tu's goodwill. He arrogantly turned his head to the side and began to chat with Elder Ning. He's old, and his legs are really inconvenient. He's not like some people who don't know how to give up their seats to the elderly. The old man's voice was filled with dissatisfaction as he frowned slightly. This caused Gao Tu to react abruptly. With a stern face, he berated Yun Luofeng, are you still not going to give up your chair to Elder Rong? In the entire hall, only he and Yun Luofeng were sitting. Therefore, Gao Tu was certain that the person Elder Rong spoke of was Yun Luofeng. Hearing this, the corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled up. His demonic eyes swept towards Gao Tu and he said with a faint smile, are you sure Elder Rong wants me to give up my seat? If it's not you, who else would it be? Gao Tu's face was stern as he sternly berated, Yun Luofeng, even though you have saved the lives of the people of the medical pavilion, Elder Rong's status is still there. You still need to respect him and not force him to repay you. What's more, Elder Rong came to the Imperial Palace for you. You should give up your seat to him. Chapter 131. Elder Ning calmly swept his gaze across the righteous emperor and laughed mockingly. This old man has never seen such a shameless person. The person that Elder Rong was talking about was obviously you, yet you insist on pushing the blame onto the Yun girl. The thickness of your skin is unparalleled. Gao Tu's expression froze. What does this old man mean? Elder Rong is not referring to Yun Luofeng? It's me. He turned his gaze towards Elder Rong at the thought of this. When he saw the ridicule in the old man's eyes, Gao Tu felt flustered and a wave of anger rose from his heart. He glared coldly at Yun Luofeng as his dignified eyes darkened. If it had not been for her, I would never have lost all my dignity in front of so many officials. I would never have been humiliated like this. Sooner or later, I will return this humiliation to her. As the emperor of Long Yuan country, Gao Tu naturally has his own pride. On the surface, he treats these people respectfully, but in reality, he is not willing to serve anyone. He has always believed that as the ruler of the 9-5, he should be above everyone else. He should accept the worship and obedience of the world. He should not be trying to curry favor with anyone else. However, in the end, he suppressed the anger in his heart and ordered coldly, servants, prepare seats for these two guests. Not 2, but 3. Elder Ning smiled calmly. General Yun Luo is old and frail. Do you intend to let him stand here forever? These words almost made Gao Tu spit out 3 liters of blood. He clenched his fists tightly and took a deep breath to quell the anger in his heart. He then ordered coldly, prepare a seat for General Yun as well. Only the heavens would know how sullen he felt when he said these words. His handsome face was filled with cold and hard lines. A sharp light flashed across his dignified eyes as he stared coldly at Yun Luo. He wanted to see if General Yun would dare to sit in front of him. Unfortunately, things did not go as he wished. Yun Luo slowly sat down in front of him. The old man's face was filled with a high-spirited smile as if he did not place the emperor in his eyes at all. Gao Tu's eyes darkened, and a fierce glint flashed across his eyes. It was filled with strong killing intent. At this moment, Gao Tu really wanted to kill this old general who had made great contributions to the Long Yuan country. Just because this old man dared to sit in front of him. Wouldn't this mean that he's on equal footing with me? Gao Tu, who was easily paranoid, couldn't help but wonder if this old man was planning to usurp the throne. Otherwise, why would he dare to sit on equal footing with him? Your Majesty. A shrill voice came from outside the hall. A eunuch walked into the great hall with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Dusting his robes, he knelt down and reporting to Your Majesty, Prime Minister Mu and Mu Wushuan are already waiting outside the great hall. Gao Tu frowned. He glanced at Elder Rong, who was seated in the hall, and coldly ordered, let them in. Yes, Your Majesty. The eunuch bowed and hurriedly walked out of the great hall. Not too long after, Mu Xingqiu, who was dressed in court robes, slowly walked into the great hall. He stood with his hands behind his back, his tall figure incomparably dignified. His elderly face showed a sense of astonishment when he saw the people seated in the great hall, clearly not knowing what was going on. Mu Wuxuan, who had followed closely behind, saw Yun Luofeng at first glance. A strange light flashed across her beautiful eyes. At this moment, an uneasy feeling welled up in her heart. Chapter 132. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Mu Xingqiu and Mu Wuxuan walked in front of Gao Tu and greeted him respectfully. Rise, Gao Tu raised his hand and said indifferently, Wuxuan, Yun Luofeng said that you've been bullying him all these years. Is this true? Mu Wuxuan raised her beautiful eyes in surprise and turned to Yun Luofeng. After a long time, she regained her senses and said righteously, Yun Luofeng, you're weak. Not only were you bullied, you even met with the crown prince's rejection of your engagement. But what does this have to do with me? Don't you dare slander me. I, Mu Wuxuan, have never done anything to hurt you. If it's true, I can't deny it. Yun Luofeng couldn't possibly know what she had done all these years. So, as long as she didn't admit it, even if Yun Luofeng came to the emperor to complain about her, it wouldn't help. Yun Shao looked at Mu Wuxuan expressionlessly. His cold eyes were so deep that no one could tell what this man was thinking. Yun Luofeng. Mu Xingqiu didn't allow anyone to answer Mu Wuxuan's question and continued, Wuxuan will never look at a trash like you. Not to mention you. It's you who has been looking for trouble with Wuxuan, and even schemed to frame her. I advise you not to bring shame upon yourself. Also, you should take care of your Yun family's guard. If he looks at Wuxuan again, don't blame me for being impolite. My identity as the daughter of the Mu family is not something a guard can dream of. Mu Wuxuan heard her grandfather's words and turned to look at Yun Shao. At that moment, her beautiful eyes flashed with obvious amazement. Before this, she had thought that Crown Prince Gao Ling was the most handsome man in Long Yuan country. She didn't expect the Yun family to have such an outstanding guard. Not only did this man have a face that even the gods would be jealous of, but his body was also perfect enough to make people's blood boil. Especially his deep eyes, it was as if they could suck people deep into his black pupils in an instant. If this cold man didn't stand beside Yun Luofeng like a guard, no one would be able to guess his lowly identity. Such a man was like a king, with such a strong aura. Even Gao Tu, who was the emperor, didn't have it. Mu Wuxuan recovered from his slight amazement and sneered in his heart. So what if this cold man's aura was strong? Since he was willing to be a guard for the Yun family, he must not have any outstanding status. A mere bodyguard was not worthy of her. She was destined to be the mother of the world. She was not someone that ordinary people could imagine. Pfft, Ning Xian couldn't help but laugh out loud. Her pretty face lit up with a smile. Grandfather, I really don't understand, why do some people think so highly of themselves? Yun Shao had only taken a glance at her and she was certain that the other party had taken a fancy to her. All the men in the world only need to glance at her once to fall in love with her. In any case, she had lived in the Yun family for half a year. How could she not know that Yun Shao only had eyes for Yun Luofeng? He would only obey Yun Luofeng's orders unconditionally. This man didn't even care about his grandfather and elder Rong. How could such a person be interested in Mu Wuxuan? Upon hearing their words, Yun Shao turned towards Mu Wuxuan once again. His paralyzed face was forever expressionless and his grim, black eyes were calm and unmoved. Chapter 133. You're too stupid. His voice was hoarse and magnetic as it slowly fell into the quiet hall. Like a stone falling into a lake, it caused a ripple. Mu Wuxuan's expression immediately changed. She clenched her fists tightly as a cold light flashed across her beautiful eyes. This man dared to insult her like this? If she was stupid, there would be no smart people in this world. You're saying I'm stupid? Suddenly, Mu Wuxuan sneered, if I'm stupid, then why wouldn't Yun Luofeng, who is smarter than me, win the crown prince's favor? Why did the crown prince choose me instead? The man was silent for a moment before he truthfully replied, he's also stupid. His words were always simple and clear. You should never expect this cold man who cherishes his words like gold to say more to you. That's right, Yun Shao, you're right. These two idiots are a match made in heaven. If they don't get together, they'll be letting down the heavens. Yun Luofeng lazily leaned against the back of her chair, the corners of her lips curled up into a demonic smile. She turned her gaze towards Yun Shao and said playfully, if you want to look in the future, just look at me. Otherwise, some people will be thick-skinned enough to think that you've taken a fancy to her. As she said this, Yun Luofeng's demonic eyes glanced at the ice-cold Mu Wuxuan and the smile in her eyes deepened. However, when her words fell into the hall, it stirred up a storm. Everyone looked at Yun Luofeng and Yun Shao with astonished gazes, as if they were watching a piece of gossip. They had long heard that Yun Luofeng was fond of beautiful men. Not only had she pursued the crown prince for many years, but she had also stolen a man in public. Who would have thought that today, she wouldn't even let her own bodyguard off? Yun Luofeng felt the astonished gazes and his old face became a little embarrassed. He glared fiercely at Yun Luofeng. This smelly girl, she's actually flirting with Yun Shao as if there's no one else around. If this gets out, where will I put my old face? Alright, Yun Shao heard Yun Luofeng's words and nodded seriously. Perhaps he was afraid that Yun Luofeng would misunderstand, so he explained in a serious manner, I heard that her skin is very thick, so I wanted to see who's thicker, her or the city wall. Sure enough, I still think that she's thicker. The man's serious expression made it seem as if he was narrating a fact, making it impossible to doubt a word he said. And this is also the longest sentence he has said so far, but it was used to judge Mu Wuxuan. Was this considered Mu Wuxuan's honor? Yun Luofeng. Even if Mu Wuxuan's self-cultivation was good, he was still angered by Yun Zhao's words and his chest heaved up and down. He angrily said, you better control your people. If you don't know how to discipline them, I don't mind doing it for you. Yun Luofeng glanced at her from the corner of his eye and slowly rose from his seat. There was a sense of arrogance in his demonic smile. You have no right to lecture my people. Mu Xingqiu, Mu Wuxuan, the blood debt that your Mu Jia owes, I, Yun Luofeng, will definitely make them pay. The Prime Minister's mansion owed the Yun family far too much. If it weren't for Mu Xingqiu, the parents of this body wouldn't have passed away at such a young age, leaving behind the young Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng, Mu Xingqiu's eyes were filled with anger. Yes, the death of your parents is indeed related to my Mu Jia, but I've already apologized. What else do you want? Besides, haven't you heard of the saying that if the king of hell wants you dead by midnight, who would dare to keep you alive until midnight? If your parents weren't fated to die, even if I leaked the information, they wouldn't have died. It was because the king of hell wanted to take care of them that they fell. Chapter 134. In other words, the death of Yun Luofeng's parents had nothing to do with him. So what if he leaked the information? If they weren't fated to die, they wouldn't have died either. If they died, it proves that the king of hell wanted to take them away. Besides, he has already apologized. Does the Yun family need to push him too far? Thinking of the time when Yun Luo led the army to flatten his mansion, his heart was full of resentment. Yun Luofeng, your parents died early. You should think about whether your parents did something wicked, or else the king of hell wouldn't have taken them away. Don't blame us all the time. I have already apologized. I, Mu Xingqiu, have a clear conscience. Yun Luofeng laughed. That year, when the two armies were at war, my parents fell into a bitter battle. As a result, the two of them thought of a countermeasure, but this countermeasure needed the cooperation of others. So, my father sent a letter to the imperial city overnight, but the emperor believed you and ordered you to cooperate with my parents. And you, because of your greed for beauty, fell into the enemy's honey trap, leaked the information, and even exposed the location of my parents, causing my parents to die. Isn't this your fault? Mu Xingqiu's face changed. He stubbornly said. I'll say it again, your parents did something wicked, that's why the king of hell took their lives. I didn't do anything wrong. What's more, it's normal for two armies to fight to the death, this matter has nothing to do with me. In the face of Mu Xingqiao's shameless denial, the ministers all felt disdain, but the other party had a daughter who was an imperial concubine. No matter how much disdain they felt in their hearts, they didn't dare to show it on their faces. Yun Luofeng sneered, turned to the two old men behind him, and slightly raised the corner of his lips. Elder Rong, Elder Ning, I know you want to help me get revenge, but I still think it's more refreshing to do it myself. You don't need to intervene in this matter, leave the rest to me. The two old men nodded, looking at Mu Xingqiao with eyes full of mockery. They have seen shameless people, but they have never seen shameless to this extent. Today was truly an eye-opener for them. Mu Wuxuang, after saying this, Yun Luofeng's evil eyes once again turned to Mu Wuxuang. You are most proud of your medical skills. I don't know if you dare to compete with me here. If I lose, you can do whatever you want with me, but if you lose, I want everyone in the Mu clan to kneel in front of my parents' grave and admit your wrongs. In addition, I want you to write a statement of guilt. Write down everything that the Prime Minister's mansion has done over the years and post it on the city walls as a warning. Mu Wuxuan's expression completely changed. She couldn't agree to either of Yun Luofeng's requests. She couldn't accept with the letter of the Prime Minister's grave, let alone the Prime Minister's grave. To Mu Luofeng with this, the Prime Minister's reputation would be ruined. Mu Minister's Luo with. Mu Wuxuang bit her lips tightly, her elegant and beautiful face showed a touch of entanglement. Her brows slightly wrinkled, obviously she was still thinking about whether or not to agree to Yun Luofeng's challenge. Ha ha ha, Mu Xingqiao, do you still remember what you said to me before? Yun Luo laughed out loud, and said sarcastically, you said that your Mu family had imperial concubine Mu, and now you have Mu Wuxuan. No matter how many geniuses my general's estate has, they can't compare to your Prime Minister's estate, who can talk pillow talk in front of His Majesty. But now, if Mu Wuxuan refuses my granddaughter's proposal, it means that you admit that the Prime Minister's people are inferior to my granddaughter. Chapter 135. You. Mu Xingqiao's eyes were burning with anger. He coldly snorted, turned his head to look at Mu Wuxuang, and sternly ordered. Wuxuang, since the Yun family wants to ask for trouble, then you must fulfill their wish. I don't believe that with Yun Luofeng's strength, he can really compete with Mu Wuxuang. Mu Wuxuang was a little hesitant, her brows slightly wrinkled, her eyes swept to the old man sitting in the hall, a strange light flashed in her eyes. This old man had fainted on a boat on the Qin River, but she had been unable to find out what kind of illness he was suffering from. However, Yun Luofeng had gone to save the old man right in front of her. Because of this, Mu Wuxuan didn't know whether she should accept this challenge or not. Wuxuang. Mu Xingqiao obviously knew the hesitation in his granddaughter's heart. He walked to Mu Wuxuang's side, his eyes revealing a gloomy light. You accept Yun Luofeng's challenge. I believe that with your strength, you will not lose to her. What's more, even if she loses, Yun Luofeng doesn't have any evidence of the Mu clan's crimes in her hands. She still can't do anything to us. As if Mu Xingqiao's words had given Mu Wuxuan confidence, her beautiful eyes slightly lifted and fell on Yun Luofeng's body. Yun Luofeng, if you lose this competition, I want you to be my servant from now on. Serve me for life. Didn't she like the crown prince? At that time, when this woman saw him and the crown prince loving each other, she would definitely feel as if a knife was being twisted in her heart and she would rather die. This was the price the general's mansion had to pay for daring to be their enemy all these years. Mu Wuxuan seemed to be able to see Yun Luofeng's pained expression, and the corners of his mouth involuntarily rose into a graceful and moving smile. All right, Yun Luofeng leaned against Yun Zhao's body as if there was no one else around, her posture languid and demonic. She stretched lazily and turned towards Mu Wuxuan with a smile. The prerequisite is that you have the ability to make me serve you like a slave. Mu Wuxuang snorted, no longer entangled in the bet. She sneered and asked, Yun Luofeng, this bet, since it was you who proposed it. Then I should be the one to decide how to make this bet. Yun Luofeng squinted at Mu Wuxuang and raised the corner of his lips. Sure, say it. Seeing that Yun Luofeng was so easily fooled, Mu Wuxuang's heart flashed with joy. Her eyes turned slightly and turned to the eunuch who was standing quietly next to her, her face still holding an elegant smile. Eunuch Lin has been castrated since he entered the palace. If you have the ability to restore him to his masculinity, I, Mu Wushuang, am willing to admit defeat. Not only will we fulfill our bet, but we will also be at your disposal. For a man who had already become a eunuch, even if an immortal came, it would be impossible for him to regain his vigor, let alone Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng looked at Mu Wushuang with a faint smile. If the two of us can't restore his masculinity, then who will win and who will lose? Mu Wushuang faintly smiled. Yun Luofeng, I just want you to know the difficulties and retreat. Your medical skills can't compare with mine. If you admit defeat now, maybe you can save the last face, but if you insist on doing so, the only one who will lose face is you. Her lecturing tone was like she was teaching Yun Luofeng. I just want to know, if the two of us can't cure him, who will be judged as the loser? Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows and looked at Mu Wushuang's elegant and indifferent face, the corner of her mouth holding a trace of a demonic smile. Chapter 136. Of course, you lose. Mu Wushuang said as if it was a matter of course. The competition was proposed by you, and the question was set by me. So, if you succeed in making Eunuch Lin a man again, I will admit defeat. Otherwise, you lose. Everyone could hear the unfairness of the verdict, causing the ministers to whisper to each other, but no one dared to question it. Yun Luo frowned slightly, and just as he was about to refute, Gao Tu's hearty laughter suddenly came from the high seat. General Yun, since it was your granddaughter who proposed the bet, your Yun family wouldn't want to go back on your word, right? Moreover, since Mu Wushuang is the one being challenged, then whether it's the question or the verdict, it should be decided by her. This is not wrong. Gao Tu's heart was still biased towards the Prime Minister's mansion. Even in front of Elder Rong, he still stood on Mu Wushuang's side. What's more, he was just a notary of the competition. He didn't hurt Yun Luofeng. Even Elder Rong couldn't say anything. After all, the people of the medical pavilion still had to take into account the spiritual gate behind him. Hee, Elder Ning laughed twice, and said mockingly, so this is the Long Yuan country's royal family's doing. As far as I know, not only did Prime Minister Mu not make any contribution to Long Yuan country, but he also almost dragged down the whole country. Just because his daughter is the imperial concubine of Long Yuan country is biased towards him. For this reason, they didn't hesitate to give up the hardworking General Yun Luo. This Long Yuan country's favoritism was too obvious. Yun Luo had made great contributions to the country, but he couldn't be compared to the daughter of an imperial concubine. Little girl, are you sure? Elder Rong frowned, looking at Yun Luofeng and asked, if you're not sure, Elder Rong, will definitely protect your safety even if I have to sacrifice my face. Although Elder Rong knew that Yun Luofeng's medical skills were excellent, the ability to bring a dead person back to life was too magical, and generally, no one could do it. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile, and his evil eyes looked towards Gao Tu, who was sitting on the dragon throne. I don't know why my old man has been loyal to a king like you all these years. My parents died too unjustly, and it's not worth it. Yun Luofeng. Anger burned in Gao Tu's chest. His sharp gaze shot towards Yun Luofeng. You were the one who made this bet. Are you going back on your word now? Yun Luofeng smiled disapprovingly. I, Yun Luofeng, have always been a man of my word. I won't be like the people of the royal family who will never keep their promises. She was referring to the fact that she didn't have to kneel in front of the royal family. However, when these words fell into Gao Tu's ears, the meaning clearly changed. We had indeed set up an engagement between you and the crown prince, but who knew that you were actually a good-for-nothing? As a piece of trash, how can you be worthy of being the mother of the world? Therefore, taking back my promise isn't my fault. It's your own failure to live up to expectations. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows slightly. She didn't explain much about Gao Tu's misunderstanding. Her evil eyes slowly turned towards Elder Rong. Elder Rong, your medical pavilion has a lot of medicinal herbs. Please help me send these over. Remember, all the herbs I want must be over 100 years old, the more precious the better. Also, put these herbs on the royal family's account. Chapter 137. Gao Tu's face was ashen, and his gaze toward Yun Luofeng was filled with malice. Yun Xiao sensed Gao Tu's gaze and his brows furrowed. He stood in front of Yun Luofeng, using his own body to block Gao Tu's line of sight. If it wasn't for the fact that Yun Luofeng didn't like other people interfering in her affairs, just this glance from Gao Tu was enough for her to die 1,000,000 times. Little Yun, tell me the name of the medicinal herb. I'll go get it for you right now. Elder Rong laughed out loud. He was in a good mood. Every stalk of 100-year-old medicinal herb had a sky-high price in the medical pavilion. Usually, they wouldn't be able to sell a single stalk in a month. They didn't expect to sell so many in such a short time. One could imagine that the emperor's treasury was going to bleed a lot this time. In addition, although this treatment is the result of the bet between me and Mu Wushuang, I once swore to my master that I will not treat patients who don't pay. The master that she mentioned was, of course, made up. Furthermore, she had used him as a shield. However, when these words fell on Elder Rong's heart, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he was even more certain of his guess. Wasn't that godly doctor very greedy? It was said that in order to seek treatment from him, one would need to pay a huge fortune in addition to having a good affinity with him. You have no money? Then he probably won't even see you. Therefore, Elder Rong had already determined that Yun Luofeng was the disciple of the miracle doctor. If Yun Luofeng knew what Elder Rong was thinking, he would definitely sigh in his heart. This misunderstanding was really deep. Yun Luofeng, you haven't even treated him and you're asking for money? Mu Xingqiu spoke first. He glared at Yun Luofeng angrily. Furthermore, I've never heard of a bet being used to treat illnesses. Furthermore, I've never heard of anyone asking for money. Yun Luofeng sighed and said awkwardly, I don't have a choice. I swore in front of my master that I won't treat patients who don't pay. Otherwise, he will expel me from the sect. Xiao Mo, who had remained silent in the divine hall for a very long time, could not help but burst into laughter when he heard Yun Luofeng's words. As expected. If her master didn't cheat others, she wouldn't be her master. Even in this kind of situation, he did not forget to ask for a sum of money. Yun Luofeng, how much do you want? Gao Tu's expression was ugly as he asked through clenched teeth. Yun Luofeng's eyes flickered a few times. He smiled slightly and said, not much, 50 million gold. If it was 50 million taels of silver, it would still make sense, but she actually asked for gold? Gao Tu tightly clenched his fists and coldly snorted, Yun Luofeng, if you cannot make Eunuch Lin a real man, we will not give you a single cent. Not to mention Gao Tu, even the ministers present all believed that Yun Luofeng was incapable of restoring Eunuch Lin's majesty. That was why he found such a lowly excuse. Now that his majesty had promised her, let's see what other excuses she could find. Just as the ministers were guessing, the girl's languid and demonic voice slowly rang out in the hall, fine, if I fail, I won't charge a single copper coin. If I succeed, I want the royal family to fulfill their promise and pay 50 million taels of gold. She agreed. Everyone was taken aback, and their astonished gazes turned to the beautiful white-clothed girl in the middle of the hall. Could it be that the 50 million taels of gold that she had proposed was not an excuse for her incompetence? However, making a eunuch a real man was too unimaginable. How could this happen? Impossible. The ministers comforted themselves in their hearts. They definitely did not believe that Yun Luofeng's medical skills had reached such a high level. Chapter 138. Elder Rong's speed was very fast. Before long, he had arrived at the imperial palace from the medical pavilion. He took out the herbs from his space ring and smiled, Yun girl, I've brought the herbs you wanted. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw the medicinal ingredients that appeared out of nowhere. They stared at the ring on Elder Rong's finger with a hint of envy. That was a space ring. A treasure that all martial artists in the world could only dream of. Who would have thought that Elder Rong would have such a treasure? It's about time. Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin and smiled evilly. Elder Rong, I don't trust the people in the imperial palace to brew the medicine. Hence, I'll leave this matter to you, Elder Rong. Oh yes, don't forget to ask the Emperor for your reward. To have Elder Rong brew the medicine personally, I'm afraid not many people in Long Yuan country have such treatment. It should not be less than 10 million gold. At this moment, the man on the high seat's face turned ashen, his eyes burning with anger. He wanted to use his eyes to cut Yun Luofeng into 1,000 pieces. Elder Rong laughed out loud. That's right, the Yun girl is right. I'll personally brew the medicine, so I can't be short of money. Gao Tu, you should prepare the money first, just in case you can't take out so much money in an emergency. Gao Tu took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart. He gritted his teeth and said, Yun Luofeng, if you can't cure his infertility, I will make you pay for what you've done today. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and smiled evilly. You won't have such a chance. What was arrogance? No one knew better than the officials present. A hedonistic son was indeed a hedonistic son. No matter what he did, he was always so brainless. A eunuch who had his manhood cut off could still become a man. This was even more exaggerated than an ant raping an elephant. Fenger, Yun Luofeng frowned and asked worriedly, how confident are you? Hearing the old man's worried voice, Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly. His eyes were filled with incomparable confidence. Don't worry, just collect the money. I will fill up our Yun family's treasury. Besides, this is what he owes our Yun family. Yun Luofeng did not say anything else. Even he himself did not know why he trusted this granddaughter whom he had not seen in 10 years. It was as if, whatever she said, she would definitely do it. Before long, Elder Rong boiled the medicinal ingredients into soup and brought it in front of Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng took the medicinal soup and slowly walked towards Eunuch Lin. Your Majesty. Eunuch Lin turned pale with fright and hurriedly turned to look at Gao Tuesday. He wanted to plead on his behalf, but Gao Tu's words made him unable to say anything. Do whatever she tells you to do, don't disobey. The Emperor's voice was filled with an unquestionable decision, causing Eunuch Lin's heart to be filled with bitterness. He turned to look at the young girl who had already walked up to him, and a sense of fear slowly rose in his heart. Drink it. The young woman raised her brows as she looked at Eunuch Lin. Eunuch Lin laughed bitterly. He extended a trembling old hand and timidly accepted the soup Yun Luofeng handed him. Before this, he had already completely offended the Yun family when he had been ordered to capture Yun Luofeng. Now, Mu Wuxuang had used him as a test subject in the competition. He could imagine that Yun Luofeng must have brewed poison for him. Eunuch Lin was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he would not have offended the Yun family in order to please the imperial consort. Now, his life was over. Chapter 139. Eunuch Lin closed his eyes and poured the medicinal soup down his throat, unafraid of death. His face was covered in makeup and no one could see his expression, but anyone could guess that it must be an extremely ugly sight. Clang! Feeling a burning sensation on his chest, the soup bowl in Eunuch Lin's hand fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. He clutched his stomach in agony and glared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. He gritted his teeth and said, You poisoned me. Poison? The crowd exploded when they heard this. They never thought that Yun Luofeng would kill Eunuch Lin with poison in front of everyone. Yun Luofeng, Mu Wuxuang glanced at the pained Eunuch Lin and furrowed her willowy brows. A sense of dissatisfaction flashed across her beautiful eyes. You had promised so readily and I really thought that you had the power to do so. I had already prepared myself for your humiliation. I never thought that for the sake of a bet, you would disregard the lives of others and actually brew a poison to harm him. Mu Wuxuang looked puzzled as she stared at the young girl who was standing with her arms crossed in front of her. She really could not understand how Yun Luofeng could still remain as steady as Mount Tai at a time like this. Mu Wuxuang furrowed her willowy brows and continued to berate him in a righteous voice. Yun Luofeng, you've harmed people's lives. How can you act so righteously? A person like you is not fit to be a doctor. In the great hall, the ministers all stared accusingly at Yun Luofeng. Some of their eyes were even filled with disdain and ridicule, feeling disdain for the young girl's actions. The young girl's peerless features curled into a demonic smile. She crossed her arms over her chest and lazily glanced at Eunuch Lin, who was rolling on the ground in fright. He's rolling on the ground with such strength. Does he look like he's been poisoned? As soon as the young lady finished speaking, all eyes gathered on Eunuch Lin. Eunuch Lin was stunned and stopped rolling on the ground. He could not understand what was going on either. In that moment, he clearly thought that he was about to be poisoned to death. Why is he still perfectly fine now? Moreover, a warm feeling enveloped his entire body, making him feel unusually comfortable. I'm not dead. Eunuch Lin crawled to his feet and dusted off the dust on his robes. He smiled awkwardly. My apologies, I thought that I'd been poisoned. Did he think he was poisoned? If not for the fact that Eunuch Lin was extremely trusted by His Majesty, they would have already cursed him. This guy thought that he was poisoned and was making a big fuss here, causing them to lose face together with him. Mu Wuxuan clenched her fists tightly as a look of shame appeared on her face. She wished she could find a hole to hide in. This was too shameful, too shameful. It was all Eunuch Lin's fault. If he hadn't stood up for him, he wouldn't have been humiliated like this. Your Majesty, just as Eunuch Lin was about to explain his actions, there was a thump as a leg kicked him in the crotch. Caught off guard, he was sent flying. What are you doing? Eunuch Lin shrieked angrily as he glared at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng didn't say much. She lifted Eunuch Lin up again and slammed him onto the ground. She stepped on Eunuch Lin's body and said evilly, "Don't forget, the Emperor said that you have to do whatever I tell you to." Then, Yun Luofeng retracted his leg, his voice filled with laziness. Chapter 140. Aside from Yun Shao, no one else had noticed that Yun Luofeng had injected spiritual energy into Eunuch Lin's body while he was berating him. Eunuch Lin's chest burned with rage. He knows that Yun Luofeng must have done it on purpose. He was just looking for an excuse to beat him up. The more he thought about it, the angrier Eunuch Lin became. He rose to his feet and was about to complain when he suddenly felt a burning sensation in his crotch. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Ning Xian, turn around. Yun Luofeng turned towards Ning Xian and raised his brow. Ning Xian blinked and a sense of confusion flashed in her eyes. However, she did not ask anything and turned her back towards Yun Luofeng. The moment the beautiful girl turned around, Yun Luofeng pulled out a sword from a guard's hand. With two swishing sounds, Eunuch Lin's clothes were all cut to shreds. The moment she swung her sword down, the cold man who had remained expressionless reached out to cover her eyes. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of his lips. Sometimes, she did not need to say much for Yun Shao to know what to do. Even Yun Luofeng himself could not understand when she and Yun Shao had developed such a tacit understanding. Impossible, I must be blind. This is absolutely impossible. After a moment of silence in the Great Hall, a shocked voice suddenly rang out. Mu Wuxuan had forgotten all the restraint a woman should have as her beautiful eyes stared fixedly at the naked Eunuch Lin. She hurriedly covered her mouth to prevent herself from screaming out loud. This woman has really turned a eunuch into a real man? How is this possible? Even my master could not do such a thing. How did this woman manage to do it? At this moment, Mu Wuxuan's body began to tremble violently. Her elegant features were now completely pale and colorless. Eunuch Lin. Gao Tu rose to his feet abruptly and exclaimed angrily, "How dare you? You actually hid in our harem as a man. What are your intentions?" Thump. Eunuch Lin was so frightened that he fell to his knees and spoke in a trembling voice, "Your Imperial Majesty, this servant has been wrongly accused. This servant has really undergone the punishment of castration. However, I don't know what's going on, it has grown back on its own. Eunuch Lin, there's no need for you to say anything more. You must have escaped the punishment. Guards, drag Eunuch Lin away and behead him in public." A murderous intent flashed in Gao Tu's eyes as he ordered sternly. Based on Gao Tu's point of view, Eunuch Lin must have escaped the punishment of castration. That was why he now has the characteristics of a man. This could not be the effect of Yun Luofeng's medicine. Seeing the two guards walking over, Eunuch Lin's body softened and he collapsed to the ground. His face was filled with despair. He knew that His Majesty wouldn't acknowledge Yun Luofeng's ability and would only use him as an example. Gao Tu turned and looked at Luofeng. From Luofeng, I, Lin, Luofeng, I, and Luofeng, Luo, I, from the punishment, from Luo, Lin, and Luo, Chen, Hu, Lin, this competition does not count. You can choose another day to compete with Mu Wuxuan again. Yun Luofeng gently raised her brows. She never thought that Gao Tu would shamelessly deny everything. He had even directly judged that Eunuch Lin had escaped the punishment of castration. His motive was to protect Mu Wuxuan. Suddenly, Yun Luofeng wanted to know what benefits the Prime Minister's residence had given him to cause him to act in such an unreasonable manner. Chapter 141. Since you claim that Eunuch Lin has escaped the punishment of castration, then I shall castrate you. Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly. The sword in her hand suddenly left her hand and with a slash, it sliced through Eunuch Lin's penis. As her eyes were still blindfolded by Yun Shao, this attack was completely based on instinct. Arg! A heart-wrenching scream pierced through the air, bringing with it a hair-raising mournful shriek. Eunuch Lin immediately fainted from the pain. Fresh blood continued to gush from his lower body, staining the ground red. The young girl's cruel and decisive methods caused the officials to shiver. They never thought that she would castrate Eunuch Lin in front of everyone. Yun Luofeng. Gao Tu was thoroughly enraged. He suddenly stood up and said sternly, "What are you doing?" As if he did not sense Gao Tu's anger, Yun Luofeng said unhurriedly, "Elder Rong, please prepare another bowl of medicine and force it into his mouth. This time, I have already castrated Eunuch Lin in front of everyone so that certain people will no longer have any excuse." Elder Rong recovered from his shock and laughed out loud. "Little girl, there's still some medicine left. I'll go get it for you. This girl is decisive in killing and never shows mercy to her enemies. Her future achievements will be immeasurable." As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly walked out of the great hall and soon disappeared under the blazing sun. A moment later, Elder Rong, who was carrying a bowl of medicine, strode into the great hall. Without another word, he walked in front of Eunuch Lin and held his chin tightly with his fingers, forcing the bowl of medicine into his mouth. Cough, cough. The eunuch choked and coughed a few times, slowly regaining consciousness. At the same time, Yun Luofeng's fist once again landed fiercely on his body. With a slash, he spat out a mouthful of blood and his already pale face turned even paler. After this ordeal, Eunuch Lin seemed to have aged a few decades and his gaze gradually became unfocused. All the officials stared fixedly at Eunuch Lin, unblinking, afraid that they would miss something. Even Mu Wuxuan did not care about the difference between men and women, his gaze landing on Eunuch Lin's crotch. Under everyone's gazes, Eunuch Lin's blood-stained crotch was like a bean sprout that was beginning to sprout. The entire hall quietened down along with the changes in his body. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Bang! Gao Tu's body landed heavily on the dragon throne. His face was ashen as he stared at the dazed Eunuch Lin. He thought about how laughable his words were. Impossible, this can't be true. Mu Xingqiu was the first to react. His body trembled as he staggered backwards. He stared at Eunuch Lin in disbelief. A eunuch could become a man? He had never heard of such a thing. If Yun Luofeng had not castrated Eunuch Lin in front of them, perhaps they would have been like Gao Tu and believed that Eunuch Lin had avoided the castration, and not because of the medicine. In an instant, all the officials in the hall looked towards Yun Luofeng, their eyes burning with passion. Just how great of a medical skill was needed to make a eunuch grow into a man? Forget about Mu Wuxuan, even her master did not have such a powerful ability. It was laughable that Mu Wuxuan had used a lecturing tone to speak to Yun Luofeng. Chapter 142. Your Majesty, this time, my granddaughter has won the bet. Shouldn't you ask the Prime Minister's residents to fulfill their promise? Yun Luoqiu's eyes were filled with pride as he asked in a bright voice. At this moment, Gao Tu's expression was rather disheveled as he slumped onto the dragon throne. His gaze slowly turned towards Mu Xingqiu and his grandson, and he said weakly, "Prime Minister Mu, tomorrow, you will personally go to the graves of Yun Luofeng's parents and kneel down to apologize to them. Also, write a letter of guilt and paste it on the city walls." Mu Xingqiu's face was ashen. As he lowered his head, a fierce look flashed across his eyes. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." At this time, Gao Tu could not show favoritism towards him, so he could only lower his stance. However, he would remember this debt. One day, he would repay this damned girl, Yun Luofeng. "I'm tired, all of you can leave." Gao Tu closed his eyes tiredly. His heart was filled with bitterness. No matter how he thought about it, he would never have thought that Yun Luofeng was really a doctor, and had such extraordinary medical skills. If he had known earlier, he would not have sided with the Prime Minister's residence and offended such a genius doctor. At this moment, Gao Tu finally understood the meaning of Elder Rong's words. Compared to Yun Luofeng, Mu Wuxuang was really nothing. "Elder Ning," Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow and turned to face Elder Ning. The corners of his lips curled into an evil smile. "Hand over all the things you found these past few years to the Prime Minister's residence. Have them write down their crimes according to the contents. I want everything." Half a year ago, she had asked Elder Ning to investigate all the crimes of the Prime Minister's residence, just for today. She would make the people from the Prime Minister's residence admit to everything they had done in front of everyone. Also, the smile on Yun Luofeng's face did not change. Instead, it became even more evil. "It's not enough for the Prime Minister's residence to just paste the letter of guilt on the city gates. I want the Prime Minister's residence to read out the contents of the letter of guilt in front of all the citizens of Long Yuan country." Yun Luofeng. Mu Xingqiu clenched his fists in anger. A wave of anger almost burst out from his chest. "Don't go too far. Could it be that your Prime Minister's mansion can afford to gamble, but can't afford to lose?" Yun Luofeng cast a sidelong glance at the ashen-faced Mu Xingqiu. "Since that's the case, Yun Shao, take these people to the city gates tomorrow and force them to confess their crimes. If they refuse to talk no matter what, beat them until they are willing to talk." "Yun Luofeng, how dare you? I am an important minister of the imperial court. What qualifications do you have to kidnap me?" Mu Xingqiu's eyes were filled with intense killing intent as he asked fiercely. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. "So what if you're an important official of the court? I, Yun Luofeng, never fear anyone when I do things. If you don't believe it, you can give it a try." Mu Xingqiu clenched his fists tightly. His body trembled in anger. His eyes were spitting fire as he stared fixedly at the girl's lazy yet demonic figure. The killing intent in his eyes intensified. If he had known earlier, he would have killed this little slut before Yun Luo returned to the imperial court. But how could he have known that a good-for-nothing whom he had looked down on would actually cause so much trouble? "Mu Xingqiu, I didn't expect that apart from being shameless, you old thief, you would also go back on your word." Yun Luofeng laughed loudly. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. "However, since you've agreed to do something, you must do it. If you're unwilling to do so, I won't use any forceful methods." Chapter 143. You. Mu Xingqiu was so angry that he couldn't even speak. He subconsciously looked at Gao Tuesday. When he saw that Gao Tu's eyes were still closed and he didn't care about their dispute, his heart slowly sank into despair. Yun Luofeng, Mu Wuxuang suppressed the jealousy in her heart and stared coldly at Yun Luofeng. Her beautiful eyes flashed fiercely. "I, Mu Wuxuang, am willing to concede defeat. I promise you that I will go to the city gates tomorrow, but I hope you won't regret what happened today." In this Long Yuan country, without the protection of the royal family, she would never be able to fight against the Yun family. The reason for this was none other than the existence of Yun Luo in the Yun family. As long as Yun Luo didn't die, she would never be able to destroy this slut, Yun Luofeng. Now, whenever she thought of Yun Luofeng's medical skills, Mu Wuxuang felt as if a claw was fiercely scratching her heart. It was extremely uncomfortable. If she didn't get rid of him, she would never be at ease for the rest of her life. All right, I'll be waiting for you at the city gates tomorrow. After Yun Luofeng had finished speaking, she stretched lazily. She moved her shoulders and curled the corners of her lips seductively. Yun Xiao, let's go home. After saying this, she slowly turned around and walked out of the main hall. The afterglow of the setting sun poured down and fell on the girl's snow-white dress. It was so beautiful that it could take one's breath away. Yun Xiao was like a loyal bodyguard, following by Yun Luofeng's side from the very beginning. The man's face was always expressionless, so grim that it was as if nothing could move him. Hee, Elder Ning laughed and looked meaningfully at the backs of the two young men as they left. He then said meaningfully, I'm very curious, where did the Yun girl get her luck to pick up such a man? General Yun, this time your Yun family is really lucky, After laughing twice, he walked out of the main hall, leaving behind a dumbfounded Yun Luo. Ever since the incident in the main hall spread, Yun Luofeng's name suddenly spread throughout the entire Long Yuan country. To describe it in 4 words, she became famous as a doctor. Those who had previously mocked and ridiculed her immediately changed their attitudes and wished that they could kneel down and lick her boots. So what if Yun Luofeng couldn't cultivate? She was a miracle doctor. With the reputation of being a divine doctor, it was unknown how many experts were willing to protect her. She could basically travel unimpeded on the continent. Even though Yun Luofeng had saved Elder Ning by the Qin River that day, many people still held a skeptical attitude. But now, so many officials from the imperial palace had gone to General Yun's residence to curry favor with him. One could imagine the shock that Yun Luofeng brought to them. At this moment, Mu Xingqiu and Mu Wuxuan of the Prime Minister's residence were standing at the entrance of the imperial city with embarrassed expressions on their faces. Behind them, a group of guards stood as still as a mountain, giving them nowhere to escape. They could only accept the astonished and shocked gazes of the people around them. Everyone. Yun Luofeng swept her gaze across the 2 people who were standing in a sorry state. She then turned her gaze towards the crowd of onlookers. Her beautiful face was filled with arrogance and coldness. I believe that all of you know what happened to the general's residence 10 years ago. 10 years ago? Hearing this sensitive number, the crowd started to whisper among themselves. Their astonished gazes occasionally glanced at Mu Xingqiu and his grandson. 10 years ago, my parents led the army to war. However, because Prime Minister Mu Xingqiu was greedy for women, they fell into the enemy's trap. This resulted in the leak of intelligence and caused my parents to die on the battlefield. Yun Luofeng's brows showed a deep sense of pain. Her voice also became increasingly sharp. But, Mu Xingqiu, that old thief, refused to repent no matter what. Not only did he not admit to his mistakes, he even believed that my parents had committed evil deeds and that this was their fate. Chapter 144. The young lady's words were sharp, causing Mu Xingqiu to lower his head, almost burying it in the dust. What happened 10 years ago was not unfamiliar to the people of Long Yuan country. However, due to the influence of the Prime Minister's office, no one dared to speak up for the Prime Minister's office. What do you mean by doing evil and being fated to be like this? Yun Luofeng laughed. Her laughter was filled with arrogance and rang out once again at the city gate. I only know that good people do not live long, while evil people live for 1,000 years. My parents were killed by that old bastard Mu Xingqiu. Who knew that he would not feel any remorse after killing my parents? Hence, today, I will make Mu Xingqiu confess all the evil deeds he has done over the years, to avenge my parents. Good. Someone in the crowd started clapping, and the others followed suit. At this moment, everyone's emotions were stirred up. Major General Yun is young and talented, and the young madam is valiant and heroic. They are both heroes in our hearts. I don't believe that such heroes would lose their lives on the battlefield because of their evil deeds. They were killed by Mu Xingqiu in order to protect the country. That's right. So many heroes have died on the battlefield. Could it be that their lives were taken because of their evil deeds? I have an uncle who lost his life on the battlefield, but he was a good man. I don't believe that the heavens can take in evil people. If the heavens had eyes, there wouldn't have been so many wars. Looking at the angry crowd, Yun Luofeng raised the corner of her lips slightly. Of course, she recognized the person who led the applause. That person was obviously the odd job worker of the medical pavilion. Needless to say, this person must have been sent by Elder Rong. Miss Yun, we should make them kneel down and apologize to Major General Yun. Yes, we must make them apologize. If they don't, they should pay with their lives for Major General Yun and the young madam. The reaction of the crowd was very intense. At this moment, they had thrown away all their misgivings. Some of them even spat at Mu Xingqiu, who was in a sorry state. Of course, Yun Luofeng also understood that it was precisely because these people had seen Mu Xingqiu's sorry state that they dared to step forward. If they were to face the high-spirited Prime Minister Mu, it was likely that they would not even dare to say a single word. Don't worry, Yun Luofeng raised his hand and silenced the angry voices of the crowd. I've asked them to come here now because the medical pavilion has investigated the crimes that the Mu family has committed over the years. Once this matter is over, I will make them personally go to my parents' grave and apologize. Actually, these things were all investigated by Elder Ning. However, the people did not know Elder Ning's identity. Therefore, Yun Luofeng brought up the medical pavilion. With the reputation of the medical pavilion, no one would doubt the truth of the matter. Mu Xingqiu's expression was very ugly, especially when someone had spat on him when he wasn't paying attention. The spit even had a disgusting stench that made people want to vomit. Mu Xingqiu, Yun Luofeng turned around and looked at Mu Xingqiu. Take out your book of crimes and report all the crimes that you have committed over the years. If there is even one missing, I will cut off one of your arms. Mu Xingqiu's body shivered violently. His hand trembled gently and he almost dropped the book of crimes in his hand. Chapter 145. I, Mu Xingqiu, have committed many mistakes over the years. Mu Xingqiu's voice trembled. What I regret the most is my lust for beauty, causing Major General Yun and young madam to die on the battlefield. I can never make up for this mistake. Mu Xingqiu's face became more and more unsightly. The hand that was holding the book trembled more and more, and his eyes were full of despair. Secondly, when I was young, I had an affair with my sister-in-law and was accidentally discovered by my brother. In order not to spread this matter, I poisoned and murdered my brother. I told the public that he had contracted an illness and died. Wow! The crowd was in an uproar. No matter how they thought about it, Mu Xingqiu not only had an affair with his sister-in-law, but also murdered his own brother. Why didn't God punish such a person who was worse than an animal? Just as Yun Luofeng had said, good people don't live long, but scourges last for thousands of years. Compared to Major General Yun, who served the country and the people, Mu Xingqiu was the one who was truly guilty. Thirdly, because my father and mother suspected the cause of my brother's death, I was afraid that they wouldn't forgive me if they knew, so I acted first and killed them. To the public, I said that my father and mother couldn't bear the death of my brother, so they hanged themselves. The crowd was once again shocked by Mu Xingqiu's words. They thought that Mu Xingqiu was cruel enough to have an affair with his sister-in-law and brother, but they didn't expect that he would even kill his own parents. How could such a person still be alive in this world? The heavens are really blind. Next, every time Mu Xingqiu reported his crimes, the shock in the hearts of the crowd deepened. This Mu Xingqiu killed his brother and father, had an affair with his sister-in-law, and committed all sorts of crimes. There wasn't a single thing he hadn't done. It could be said that he had committed all the crimes that could be committed. Not a single one was left out. Mu Xingqiu's face turned from livid to pale, and in the end, it was as pale as a dead man's face. Until even he himself became numb, like a machine, he only knew how to read according to the book, not missing a single word. After he had reported more than 100 crimes one by one, the entire street in front of the city gate became quiet. It was so quiet that even the sound of the breeze could be heard clearly. Mu Wuxuang, it's your turn. Yun Luofeng turned her head to look at Mu Wuxuang. The corners of her lips curled up into a demonic smile. Do you plan on confessing your crimes yourself, or do you want me to help you? The help she was talking about was, of course, brute force. If Mu Wuxuang insists on not confessing, she doesn't mind using brute force to make him accept. Mu Wuxuan's face turned deathly pale in an instant. He bit his lip and silently looked at Yun Luofeng. Mu Wuxuang? Did Mu Wuxuang also make mistakes? This was impossible. Mu Xingqiu had indeed committed many evil deeds, but what did this have to do with Mu Wuxuang? Mu Wuxuang is elegant and kind, it's impossible for him to do evil things. Tisk tsk, haven't you heard of the saying, you may know a person's face but not his heart? The medical pavilion has great prestige in the mainland. Since this matter was investigated by them, it cannot be false. After Yun Luofeng's words rang out, the quiet city gate became lively once again. The crowd whispered to each other, and their eyes revealed astonishment. Mu Xingqiu, with the exception of Mu Wuxuang, was not a good person. Everyone knew that Mu Xingqiu was shameless and lustful. For the sake of beauty, he leaked information and dragged down Major General Yun and his wife. Mu Wuchen, the eldest young master of the Mu clan, was indifferent, arrogant, cruel and merciless. He did not put the world in his eyes at all. The second young master, Mu Shen, was a legitimate playboy. He often led a group of people out to cause trouble. Last time, he was severely beaten up by the Yun clan's guards who were protecting Yun Luofeng. Only Mu Wuxuang, who was elegant and kind, had not done any evil deeds. How could the world believe that he also had a book of crimes? Chapter 146. At the noisy gate of the city, after the crowd's discussion, Mu Wuxuang clenched the confession book in his hand, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Today's humiliation, one day, I will return it to Yun Luofeng. Thinking of this, Mu Wuxuang suppressed the anger in his heart and opened the book in his hand. Mu Wuxuang, have committed heinous crimes and have killed countless people. Killed countless people? Boom! Mu Wuxuang's words were like a sudden clap of thunder. Everyone's hearts were fiercely shaken. They stared dumbfoundedly at the pale-faced Mu Wuxuang. For a moment, they even suspected that there was something wrong with their ears. Facing the astonished gazes of the crowd, Mu Wuxuang kept his head down. His hand that was holding the book trembled slightly. Not only did I secretly send a message to the Crown Prince half a year ago, asking him to find a man to frame Yun Luofeng on the streets for molesting a beautiful man, causing Yun Luofeng's reputation to go down the drain. I also secretly executed some of the women who pestered the Crown Prince in Long Yuan country and pushed the blame on others. I was the one who spread Yun Luofeng's reputation of having big breasts and no brains, and being a lecherous love-struck fool. My goal was to make her break off the engagement with the Crown Prince so that I could become the Crown Princess of Long Yuan country, and 10 years ago, I was also the one who made my master ignore Yun Xingya of the Yun family. Most importantly, I have a half-sister, and once, I accidentally discovered that she was infatuated with the Crown Prince, so my sister also died in my hands. The people of Long Yuan country did remember that there was a second miss in the Prime Minister's mansion. This second miss was not as intelligent as Mu Wuxuang, nor was she a direct descendant of the Crown Prince. She was born of a concubine, so not many people cared about her death. But what they didn't expect was that the second miss of the Prime Minister's mansion was actually killed by Mu Wuxuang. This, everyone was shocked. If Mu Xingqiu's actions made them sigh endlessly, then Mu Wuxuang's actions made them unable to believe it. No one could believe that this elegant and dignified first miss of the Prime Minister's mansion was actually someone who killed her own sister. Yun Luofeng smiled faintly. She glanced at the crowd and saw a deathly pale face among the crowd. In the crowd, Mu Shen took 2 steps back. His pale face was full of anger as he glared at Mu Wuxuang. So she was the one who killed Shui. She killed my little sister, Murong Shui, for the sake of the Crown Prince. Mu Shen's heart was filled with hatred. A raging fire burned in his heart. The people of Long Yuan nation seemed to have forgotten that the second miss of the Prime Minister's mansion and Mu Shen were both born from the same mother. Now that he heard such explosive news, how could he not feel hatred in his heart? The people nearby could even hear the sound of Mu Shen grinding his teeth. You killed your sister. I wonder if Mu Xingqiu knows about this? Yun Luofeng's lips curved into a faint smile. His demonic gaze gradually swept towards the ashen-faced Mu Xingqiu as he asked. Mu Wuxuan's face was also deathly pale. She glanced at Mu Xingqiu, gritted her teeth and said, "My grandfather, he knows. Murong Shui is only the daughter of a concubine. I'm the daughter of the legal wife. Do you think that my grandfather would be biased towards a daughter of a concubine?" Hearing Mu Wuxuan's words, Yun Luofeng gently narrowed her eyes. An evil glint flashed across her dark pupils. "The two of you are really worthy of being called grandfather and granddaughter. One stole from his sister-in-law and killed his brother, the other didn't even spare his own sister. Indeed, even animals have become a family." Chapter 147. Mu Wuxuan's heart completely collapsed. She glared fiercely at Yun Luofeng. Her originally elegant and dignified face now looked extremely sinister. "Yun Luofeng, you will pay for what you've done to me today." Yun Luofeng smiled evilly as he leaned lazily against the grim man behind him. He then glanced sideways at the ashen-faced Mu Wuxuan and said, "In this world, only I, Yun Luofeng, can scheme against others. No one has ever been able to scheme against me. I'll be waiting for you to come and settle the score with me." As soon as she finished speaking, her face turned solemn and she ordered with a sneer, "Yun Shao, tie these two up and send them to my parents' grave. My old man has been waiting there for a long time." "All right." The man's grim eyes retracted from the beautiful girl's body and stared expressionlessly at Mu Xingqiu and Mu Wuxuan. A cold murderous intent flashed across his deep, black eyes. "Stop, what are you doing? I'm a minister of the imperial court and you're just a little guard, you." Mu Xingqiu was frightened by the man's imposing manner. He felt that this man not only wants to tie him up but also wants to kill him. Fear rose in his heart and he involuntarily took a step back. However, before he could turn around and escape, he was picked up by the man like a chicken. His face immediately turned pale with fright. "Let's go." Yun Luofeng looked at the two people in Yun Zhao's hands and yawned lazily. He then turned around and walked towards the city gate. After the figures of these people had disappeared, the crowd at the city gate once again burst into a clamor of discussion. Sure enough, one may know a person's face but not their heart. I never thought that the elegant and dignified eldest lady of the Mu family would be such a person. Her sister was only infatuated with the crown prince and had no intention of getting the crown prince. In the end, she actually killed her sister. Didn't you hear what she said just now? Previously, Yun Luofeng of the Yun family had molested a handsome man in the street. TSK, I really didn't expect Mu Wuxuan to be such a person. I reckon that when this matter spreads out, the crown prince will no longer want her. That's right, a scheming bitch like Mu Wuxuan is not worthy of being the mother of the nation. Outside the city, surrounded by pine trees, two mausoleums stood quietly at the top of the mountain. On top of the mausoleum, the tombstones carved with cinnabar were very eye-catching, as if they had been painted with fresh blood. The white-haired old man crawled on the ground. His trembling fingers gently stroked the words on the tombstone. His eyes revealed a deep pain. It was a pity that young General Yun Yang, a young and talented man, had been buried in the battlefield. Young Mistress Bai Ling, a heroine among women, had risked her life for the country with Major General Yun and had been buried in the battlefield with him. Feng, your parents' wish when they were alive was to be buried here together after they died. They wanted to be far away from the noise of the world and ignore the smoke of war in the world. Now, it can be said that their wish has been fulfilled. In this forest, no one can disturb them. Yun Luo closed his eyes slightly. Until now, he could still recall the war report he had received from the front line more than a decade ago. It said that Yun Yang and his wife had died on the battlefield, and the heart-wrenching pain they had felt. Before the pain in his heart could subside, he had to fight in place of his son to protect this land and its people. But in the end, what did he get in return? He couldn't avenge his eldest son and daughter-in-law, and his youngest son was also plotted against, living in a secret chamber without any light. As for him, he had left his granddaughter to go to the border for 10 years, but he had never been able to compete with imperial concubine Mu's pillow talk in the emperor's ear. Chapter 148. How could such a lecherous and incapable ruler be worthy of his loyalty? Yun Luofeng slowly walked towards the tombstone and stared at the carvings on the tombstone with her dark eyes. She seemed to be reminded of the respectable couple on the battlefield. "Father, Mother, I've come to see you." She was not the real Yun Luofeng. She was only borrowing the power of this body to continue living. However, it was because she had merged with this body that her feelings had gradually shifted towards the original body. "Don't worry, I will avenge you sooner or later. Whether it's the Prime Minister's mansion, the muddle-headed and tyrannical dog of an emperor, or the person who had truly killed you, I will avenge them all." The young girl's words caused a sense of relief to appear in Master Dongfang's eyes. He then turned towards Mu Xingqiu and his grandson, who had been escorted to the tombstone. His elderly features instantly sank. "Mu Xingqiu, you old thief, I never thought that this day would come for you." "Ha ha ha." Yun Luo burst into laughter. His smile was refreshed and his eyes were filled with malevolence. "Get out of here. You." Mu Xingqiu was enraged. Just as he was about to retort against the old man, a heavy kick landed fiercely on the back of his knees. Caught off guard, he knelt heavily on the ground. Humiliation. This was a great humiliation. Mu Xingqiu's head was pressed against the ground. He could not help but clench his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with humiliation and anger. Ever since he had risen to power, he had never suffered such humiliation. He would remember this debt. One day, he would make everyone in the general's mansion kneel before him and beg for mercy. "Yanger, Linger, can your spirits in heaven see this?" Yun Luo raised his head towards the sky and roared in delight. "That year, this dog had leaked information and caused your deaths. However, the emperor had forgotten your contributions and chosen to side with this dog. Now, I'll make them kneel and kowtow 1,000 times in front of you. I hope that your souls can rest in peace." As he spoke, a stream of muddy tears rolled down the old man's face. How many years has it been? How many years had he waited for this day? He would never forget that year, when he went to complain to His Majesty. His Majesty only said one sentence: "Since it has already happened, it is useless to pursue it." Moreover, Minister Mu did not do it on purpose. "How about this, let him apologize to you. The dead cannot come back to life, so please restrain your grief." Apologize? He had caused the deaths of his son and daughter-in-law. How could a simple apology be enough? Therefore, in his rage, he summoned all the soldiers at the border and razed Mu Xingqiu's mansion to the ground. From then on, he didn't want to interfere with the country's war, but when he heard that the people at the border were living in dire straits, he had no choice but to take command and lead the troops into battle. "Grandfather," Yun Luofeng looked at the old man who could no longer control his emotions and quickly stepped forward to support his body. His brows furrowed as he said, "It's getting late, I'll take you back to rest. After this, I'll get Yun Xiao to supervise them as they kowtow 1,000 times." "Very well." Yun Luofeng closed his eyes slightly. Although he had waited a long time for this scene today, his heart still felt like it was being crushed by a huge rock, suffocating him. If he could, he wished that he had never been a general. That way, Yin Yang and his wife would not have died on the battlefield. As they walked out of the pine forest, Yun Luofeng slowly came to a halt. His dark eyes stared at the old man beside him and asked, "Grandfather, do you blame me for not taking Mu Xingqiu's life directly?" Chapter 149. Yun Luo shook his head slightly and sighed. "I know you must have your reasons for not killing them. Grandfather will not ask. This girl, no matter what she did, he was at ease. Grandfather, have you ever wondered why the dog emperor is so biased towards the Prime Minister's residence?" Yun Luofeng stroked his chin, a trace of deep thought in his eyes. "Prime Minister Mu leaked military intelligence, causing my parents to die in battle. It is reasonable to say that Prime Minister Mu's behavior is already a crime of treason. Even if the dog emperor likes imperial concubine Mu, there is no reason to protect him." Yun Luo was stunned. He turned to look at Yun Luofeng in astonishment, his eyes clearly filled with doubt. "I really haven't considered this matter. Indeed, Mu Xingqiu's crime was treason, but not only did he not punish Prime Minister Mu, he even sided with him. Was it really because the emperor doted on imperial consort Mu? Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. Also, I helped eunuch Lin regain his manly features. If it was an ordinary emperor, he would rather believe in my abilities than announce that eunuch Lin escaped the punishment of castration. In the imperial harem, what does it mean to have a man who has not been castrated? It means that he is a cuckold. Would the emperor be so stupid as to let himself wear a cuckold? Anyone could understand the significance of a man who had not been castrated remaining in the imperial harem as a eunuch. So, even if Gao Tu did not believe in her abilities, he would choose to believe her at this time. But he, in order to side with Mu Wuxuan, would rather let himself wear a cuckold? Yun Luofeng could not help but ponder over this matter. Feng, according to what you've said, it's true. Yun Luo fell silent for a moment before returning to his senses. Gao Tu is too biased towards the Mu family. If it wasn't for some reason, would never believe it. So, that dog Mu Xingqiu cannot be touched for now. A murderous glint flashed across Yun Luofeng's eyes. However, I can swear that one day, I will use Mu Xingqiu's head as a sacrifice to my parents. I will also make the unreasonable biased Gao Tu roll down from his high position. Good. Yun Luo laughed out loud and patted Yun Luofeng's shoulder. You are truly worthy of being a descendant of my Yun family. My Yun family members can lack other things, but they must have confidence and ambition. I believe that your achievements in the future will definitely be very high. Looking at the old man's relaxed expression, Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a devilish smile. In a few days, the red arbor tree would bear spirit fruits. It was time for her to give this old man 2 surprises. The next day, in the rear courtyard of the Yun family, a young girl lay lazily on a chaise longue. She held a grape in her hand and carefully removed the seeds from it before placing the sparkling, translucent grape into her mouth. I wonder what will happen if I plant these fruit trees in the divine grimoire space. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled up into a devilish smile. Of course, she was only thinking about it. Who knew that just as she had this thought, a young and tender voice would ring out from within her soul. If you eat up Yun Shao completely, I will tell you that fruit trees can also be planted. Xiao Mo's voice sounded a little angry. It had been more than half a year and his master had not made any progress at all. He was about to die from anxiety. Oh. Yun Luofeng gently raised an eyebrow. But you've already told me. What should I do? Chapter 150. In her soul, there was a moment of silence. Then, she heard a loud wail, causing her soul to tremble. Wah, master, I don't want to talk to you anymore, you big jerk. The adorable little fellow cried and threw a tantrum before cutting off all contact with Yun Luofeng and ignoring her in a fit of pique. However, Yun Luofeng could see the little fellow squatting in a corner and drawing circles, his adorable face filled with grief. Just as Yun Luofeng was about to console him, a familiar figure entered her line of sight. Her lips curled into a smile. Yun Shao, have you completed your mission? The man nodded grimly. 1,000 kowtows, not one less. Just 100 kowtows was enough to make a person bleed. Hence, one could imagine Mu Xingqiu's tragic state. He would probably need to rest for a long time after this incident. My lady. Suddenly, a maidservant hurried in. His Highness the Crown Prince is here to visit. The Crown Prince? Yun Luofeng raised an evil brow. Let him in. Yes, my lady. After reporting, the maidservant hurried out. Not long after, a handsome young man dressed in green robes appeared before her eyes. The young man's face was pale and he looked exhausted. His sharp black eyes stared at Yun Luofeng, who was lying on the chaise longue, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. Yun Luofeng, did you do this on purpose? Gao Ling clenched his fists tightly. The first thing he had said to Yun Luofeng was not to beg for her to heal him, nor was it to beg for her forgiveness. Instead, it was a question. I did it on purpose. What can you do to me? What can you do to me? The young girl's tone was arrogant and domineering, as if she had no regard for this man, who was the dream lover of thousands of girls in Long Yuan country. You. Gao Ling's handsome face turned ashen and he spat angrily. You knew that I would regret this in the future. That's why you made me promise not to pester you that day by the Qin River, am I right? This woman did it on purpose. She had lied to me so that I would not pester her in the future. Yun Luofeng glanced at Gao Ling's remorseful face, raised the corners of his lips and said, looks like I have good foresight. Gao Ling's heart trembled violently. That's right, Yun Luofeng was still a piece of trash who couldn't cultivate. However, based on her medical skills, she was qualified to become his crown princess. How could he let her go just like that? Furthermore, Elder Rong from the medical pavilion was full of admiration for this genius physician. Gao Ling was regretting his decision. Yun Luofeng. Gao Ling took a few steps towards Yun Luofeng and said arrogantly, you've loved me for so many years. You can't possibly become heartless just because you want to. I know that I'm still in your heart, you just don't want to admit it. No problem, this prince will fulfill my original promise and marry you. Yun Luofeng smiled. What about Mu Wuxuang? Gao Ling was taken aback. After a moment of silence, he said, I will marry both of you at the same time. Are you satisfied? You want to hug them on both sides? That's not a bad idea. Yun Luofeng laughed icily. Her tone was unruly and her expression was insolent. Unfortunately, I, Yun Luofeng, will never share my man with anyone else. My man can only have me as his woman. If he dares to touch anyone else, I will cripple this pair of adulterers. Chapter 151. Yun Luofeng. Gao Ling could no longer suppress the anger in his chest. He clenched his fists and said, that's impossible. It's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. No man would choose to marry only one woman. Marry me and I'll give you the honorable status of being the mother of the world. You'll be revered by all. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled up into a devilish smile. Her voice was calm, so calm that it caused a storm to rise in one's heart. If that's the case, I'd rather not marry for the rest of my life. She'd rather not marry for the rest of her life than to share a man with someone else. Just how much courage did one have to make a woman say such words that went against the world? Yun Xiao glanced coldly at Gao Ling, who was about to explode in anger. He silently removed the grape seeds and brought the sparkling, jade-like grape to Yun Luofeng's lips. From the beginning to the end, he had never placed Gao Ling in his eyes. The young girl narrowed her eyes and her red lips gently sucked on the grape. She even swallowed the man's finger. A devilish smile appeared on her beautiful face and her warm tongue licked the man's finger. She stretched lazily and reclined on the chaise longue. With a smile that did not reach her eyes, she said, there are rumors in the outside world that I, Yun Luofeng, am extremely lustful. Even though Mu Wuxuang has proven that he was the one who spread these rumors, it's still very true. With such a perfect man by my side, do you think I'll continue to like you? Gao Ling had noticed Yun Zhao's presence ever since he had entered the Yun family's backyard. However, he had deliberately avoided looking at him. Honestly, when he saw this man who stood beside Yun Luofeng like a mountain, a sense of inferiority arose from the depths of his heart. He did not know where this feeling of inferiority came from. He only felt that this cold man's aura was too strong and his features were so perfect that it made him jealous. That was why he had chosen to ignore him. However, when he heard Yun Luofeng's words, Gao Ling felt a surge of anger in his chest. He turned his gaze towards the expressionless man and spat fiercely, Yun Luofeng, he's just a guard. Based on his status, he's not worthy of you. So what if this man's aura is strong? A guard was a guard, there was simply no comparison between them. Is that so? Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows slightly. She stretched lazily and stood up from the chaise longue. Then, she tugged on Yun Zhao's shirt forcefully and pulled him in front of her. She raised her head and kissed the man's cold lips. The man was startled at first, then he recalled the contents of the erotic pictures. He subconsciously hugged the girl in front of him, and somewhat awkwardly responded to the girl's kiss. Looks like you've seen the contents of the erotic pictures? Yun Luofeng pushed the man away and narrowed his eyes. A dangerous arc flashed across his eyes. Yun Xiao thought that she was angry. Her heart tightened, but she still nodded honestly. If you don't like it, I can throw it away. Yun Luofeng smiled and her stern expression disappeared along with her smile. Her lips curled into a demonic smile as she patted Yun Xiao's shoulder encouragingly. Not bad, you are worth teaching. You are much more mature than before. If it was the Yun Xiao from half a year ago, she reckoned that he would have fled the moment she kissed him. Have you seen enough? Yun Luofeng swept her gaze towards Gao Ling and smiled at the young man's eyes, which were filled with anger. If you've seen enough, you can get lost. I'm not interested in showing others a live version of the erotic pictures. Chapter 152. Gao Ling's face was ashen as he spat angrily. Yun Luofeng, you've actually degenerated yourself into an illicit relationship with a guard. You have no sense of shame. You're absolutely despicable. This crown prince must have been blind to want to save a whore like you. It's not like I don't have any other women besides you. Based on my noble status, countless women have sent themselves to my bed. Don't regret losing me. He was nearly driven mad with anger. This woman is actually flirting with a guard right in front of me. Furthermore, she would rather choose a lowly guard than me. Be it in terms of status or power, I'm definitely more powerful than this guard. Yun Luofeng will regret losing the chance to become the crown prince's consort. Likewise, Yun Luofeng curled his lips and retorted, however, let me remind you, you've slept with so many women. If one day you come down with a venereal disease, don't come begging for me to treat you. I won't treat anyone from the imperial family. The young girl's words brought Gao Ling back to his senses. How could he have forgotten that his main purpose for coming here was to treat his illness? In the end, he had been so angered by these two lovey-dovey that he had forgotten his original purpose. Even the people from the medical pavilion had said that Yun Luofeng was the only one who could treat him. He could not give up on this opportunity. Yun Luofeng, was it you that caused me to lose all of my spiritual power? I'll give you a chance now. Treat me and we'll call it even. The more Gao Ling thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. That day by the Qin River, Yun Luofeng must have done something to him, which was why he had lost all his spiritual power. Yun Luofeng sneered, I've said it before, I won't treat you. You. Gao Ling was about to curse, but he swallowed his words. His face was ashen as he said, I'm the crown prince of the empire. You're the general's daughter, I order you to treat me. Order? Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. Do you know what price the people from the medical pavilion had to pay to come to me? Not only did they offer me a red tree, they even asked me to treat you in a polite manner. You want me to treat you with a single order? Ridiculous, too ridiculous. Jailing's words sounded like a joke. Yun Luofeng laughed out loud. Jailing, 10 years ago, my second uncle was seriously injured. My father went to the palace to save him. He even knelt before the royal doctor, but your people didn't do anything. What right do you have to ask me to save you? Unless your father personally kneels in front of my old man, I might consider it. 10 years ago, Gao Tu only needed to say one word, and second uncle wouldn't have to be paralyzed for 10 years. It was a pity that Gao Tu's words never came. Therefore, if she wanted him to save Gao Ling, she might consider it if Gao Tu knelt in front of old Master Gao himself. However, this was only a consideration. It was not certain whether he would help. Yun Luofeng, don't go overboard. My father is the emperor, and Yun Luo is only a subject. If the monarch wants the minister to die, the minister has no choice but to die. If my father wanted to kill Yun Luo, he would only need to say the word. If it weren't for the fact that Yun Luo has guarded the borders for so many years, your words today would be enough to execute his entire family. Yun Luofeng laughed evilly and said arrogantly, since I, Yun Luofeng, dare to say such words, it means that I'm not afraid of the royal family. I don't know what it means to say that if the emperor wants a subject to die, the subject must die. I only know that whoever offends the Yun family will be executed. Chapter 153. 10 years. The Yun family had endured for 10 years. Now, because of her appearance, it was time for the Yun family to rise again. No one would ever dare to offend the Yun family again. Yun Xiao, throw him out of here. If Gao Ling dares to step into the general's residence in the future, I'll break one of his legs. If he dares to take 2 steps, I'll break both of his legs. How will he be able to walk through the gates of the general's residence? The young lady flicked her sleeves and crossed her legs. She exuded a domineering aura, as if she was the ruler of the world. She looked like a true ruler as she sat on a chair and looked down at Gao Ling. Before Gao Ling could react, he felt a tall, black shadow looming over him. A cold, murderous aura emanated from the shadow, causing his heart to tremble. Then, a powerful force slammed into his chest. Immediately, his body shot out like an arrow from a bow, flying out of the courtyard and out of the door. No one had noticed that after Yun Xiao had thrown Gao Ling out of the courtyard, her cold eyes had inadvertently glanced at an old tree not too far away. Then, a gray figure had flown out of the courtyard from behind the old tree. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without anyone noticing. Outside the gates of the general's residence, the crowd had gathered and were pointing at Gao Ling, who had flown out of the general's residence. Gao Ling felt ashamed. He quickly rose to his feet and hurriedly walked towards the other side of the street. However, he did not notice that a gray shadow was following closely behind him. Just as Gao Ling turned into an alley, a fist suddenly came from behind and landed on Gao Ling's back with a loud thud. Pfft! Gao Ling spat out a mouthful of blood and turned angrily towards the man in gray. He asked angrily, "Who are you? Why did you attack me?" TSK, the man in gray stroked his chin and clicked his tongue. This crown prince of Long Yuan country is really soft and tender. If I were to sell him to the bamboo house, he would fetch a good price. Hearing the man in gray's words, Gao Ling's expression changed completely. There was no one in the mainland who did not know what the bamboo house was. Don't be fooled by the elegant name of the bamboo house. It was actually a brothel. However, it was different from ordinary brothels. The people in this brothel were all men. All the guests they served were men. It could be said that Bamboo House provided a chance for a pervert with a fetish for men to enjoy. As for the owner of the bamboo building, it was said that she was a woman, but no one had ever seen her true appearance. Hero, Gao Ling took a deep breath and suppressed the rage in his heart. He then asked, "May I know how I've offended you?" "You didn't offend me, you offended my master." The man in gray robes glanced at Gao Ling and laughed gloatingly. "However, you've got guts to snatch my master's woman. You must be tired of living. Selling you into a bamboo house to serve a man is really a bargain for you." It was said that Lin Xiong, the unlucky girl, was punished by her master because she didn't do her best in dealing with young madam. Therefore, he had to perform well so that he wouldn't end up like that unlucky guy. "Who is your master?" Gao Ling was taken aback. This man in gray was far too powerful. Perhaps even the strongest cultivator of the royal family was no match for him. If that was the case, wouldn't his master be even more powerful? "You don't even know who my master is?" The man in gray looked at Gao Ling with disdain. "Of course, you don't deserve to know my master's name. All you need to know is that he's called the Ghost Emperor." Chapter 154. The Ghost Emperor? Gao Ling raised his head in shock and his eyes widened as if he had been frightened. His handsome face instantly turned pale. "Did you say the Ghost Emperor?" Others may not know about the Ghost Emperor, but as the crown prince of the royal family, Gao Ling was well aware of the powers that were above the royal family. The Ghost Emperor was a legendary figure and no one had ever seen his true face. It was said that he was extremely powerful and bloodthirsty. He could turn a city into ashes with a wave of his hand and trample millions of soldiers with a lift of his foot. Even the spiritual sect behind the royal family had to be wary of him. However, Gao Ling could not figure out when he had offended the Ghost Emperor and snatched his woman away. Suddenly, a possibility surfaced in Gao Ling's mind, and his expression darkened. Even though he had regretted his actions and wanted to save Yun Luofeng, he had only left the general's mansion for half an incense's time. Therefore, the Ghost Emperor's woman could not be that slut, Yun Luofeng. There was only one possibility. It had to be Mu Wuxuang. He never thought that the Ghost Emperor would take a liking to Mu Wuxuang. If that was the case, it would be troublesome for him to marry Mu Wuxuang. Hero, a light flashed across Gao Ling's eyes as he asked, actually, the person that the Ghost Emperor hates is not me, but Yun Luofeng, who has humiliated the woman he loves. The gray-robed man was dumbfounded. He blinked his eyes in a daze. What did this guy mean by that? What does he mean by Yun Luofeng has humiliated the woman my master loves? Doesn't my master love Yun Luofeng? When has Yun Luofeng ever humiliated me? No matter what you say now, it's useless. The man in gray could not understand the meaning of this sentence, so he did not say anything more. He sneered at Gao Ling. Chun Yang has been in dire need of manpower recently. With your soft and tender skin, I'm sure you'll be able to earn a fortune for her. Bang! This time, without giving Gao Ling any chance to react, the man in gray raised his elbow and slammed it into Gao Ling's forehead. Gao Ling's vision blurred and he lost consciousness. Who told you to try and take liberties with my future madam? The man in gray kicked Gao Ling's back and spat angrily. Is Lady Yun someone that a good-for-nothing like you can dream of? What's so great about a crown prince? How dare you order Miss Yun to treat your illness? I didn't expect my master to listen to Miss Yun. If I let you order Miss Yun around, wouldn't that mean that my master's status isn't as noble as yours? The more the gray-robed man thought about it, the angrier he became. He kicked Gao Ling even harder. If not for the fact that his master did not want others to know his identity, he would have already announced that Yun Luofeng was the future wife of the Ghost Emperor. She wanted to see how these shameless people would pester her now. The last kick landed on Gao Ling's crotch. The intense pain caused Gao Ling's body to tremble and he almost woke up. Unfortunately, he didn't wake up and was knocked out again by the gray-robed man. If it wasn't for Master wanting to spare your life for now, I would have already dismembered you into 1,000 pieces. The gray-robed man snorted coldly. He swiftly put Gao Ling into a sack and slung it over his shoulder. Then, he quickly flew away. The bamboo building was similar to the medical pavilion. Every country had a station. However, the influence of the two forces was completely different. Of these two parties, one focused on medical skills, while the other focused on having fun. Oh, I was wondering who it was today. It's actually young Master Qin. Chapter 155. Dressed in a long, jade-green dress, she gracefully walked down the stairs. This was an extremely beautiful woman. Her seductiveness was different from Feng Ye's. Compared to Feng Ye's enchanting appearance, this woman was more of a flirt. She was naturally seductive, and when she raised her hand, it made people feel that she was intentionally seducing them. Only women who often hung out in romantic places would have this kind of seductive attitude. The corner of the man's forehead twitched and he shook his head helplessly. When you're facing me, can you put away your seductiveness? No wonder my master doesn't like you. Chun Yang's expression stiffened for a moment. She took a deep breath and her pair of romantic eyes contained a hint of resentment. Your master is truly unreasonable. I only wanted to follow him, but he refused me without even thinking about it. In any case, I, Chun Yang, have managed such a large bamboo building, but he didn't give me any face. My master doesn't accept female subordinates. It's not like you don't know this. Furthermore, your bamboo building is such a place. It would be strange if my master would take a liking to it. Qin Yuan looked at her with disdain. This woman managed a romantic place, how could master not hate her? Based on her, she still wanted to follow master? Master probably couldn't even be bothered to look at her. I know that your master hates women, but this bamboo building of mine is a business between men. Your master shouldn't be this disgusted. Chun Yang knitted her willowy eyebrows. You don't understand? Qin Yuan said mockingly, my master has kept his chastity for so many years just to wait for his future wife. Now that he has found the target he wants to pursue, he didn't hesitate to put down all his dignity and willingly become her bodyguard. Chun Yang's eyes lit up. Are you serious? There's really a woman who can accept your master. I'm very curious about who that woman is. Unfortunately, I've always thought of your master as a homosexual. Moreover, I'm planning to draw him and another man in my sketchbook. Qin Yuan's face darkened. Chun Myang, on account of our many years of friendship, let me give you a warning. If you dare to draw my master and another man, my master will definitely kill you. However, if you draw him and his future wife, maybe my master will be happy and let you go to Long Yuan Nation to serve his wife. Of course, don't count on becoming my master's subordinate. Actually, Qin Yuan was just casually saying these words. Who would have thought that Chun Myang would actually take it seriously? She unconsciously fell into deep thought. A woman who could subdue a ghost emperor must be very domineering. In that case, who would go up and who would go down? This problem needed to be carefully considered. Chun Myang, I'm here today to give you something. Qin Yuan recalled the events of today. He threw the gunny sack on his shoulder onto the ground. At that moment, the gunny sack loosened and an unconscious youth appeared in front of Madame Chun's eyes. Looking at the youth's fair and handsome face, Madame Chun's eyes lit up once again. This time, the goods are really not bad. Soft skin and tender flesh. I reckon that we can sell them for a good price. Qin Yuan raised the corners of his lips. This fellow is the crown prince of Long Yuan Nation. He had delusions of pestering my future wife and had offended my master. So I've sent him to you to enjoy 3 months. Within these 3 months, find me a few hundred strong men to serve him. After 3 months, throw him back to Long Yuan Nation. Also, my future wife doesn't like people interfering with her matters. In the future, you must never reveal that my master had asked you to do this. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you. Chapter 156. Hearing this, Chun Myang shuddered. It was obvious that she was terrified of the man who was known as the Ghost Emperor. Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. Chun Myang regained her senses and gritted her teeth. This guy can offend anyone, but he even dares to offend the Ghost Emperor's woman. He must be tired of living. I'll let him receive guests tonight. He must receive 100 guests every day before he can rest. Qin Yuan nodded. Chun Myang, you should thank me. This crown prince is not bad looking and it's his first time selling himself. I'm sure you'll earn a lot of money. Hee hee, Chun Myang giggled and winked at Qin Yuan. Thank you, young Master Qin. If you have such good stuff in the future, you must send it to me. To thank you, I'll never draw you with another man in my sketchbook ever again. Qin Yuan's face darkened once again. Every time he thought of this woman drawing him with another man, he would feel the urge to explode in anger. Who asked him to befriend such a perverted woman when he was young and immature? It was too late for regrets now. After Mu Xingqiu and his grandson pleaded guilty, another major event happened in Long Yuan country. On the day after Mu Xingqiu and his grandson pleaded guilty, Crown Prince Gao Ling disappeared. The citizens of Long Yuan country thought that Gao Ling had been provoked by Mu Wuxuan and felt that he had loved the wrong person all this while. Hence, he chose to hide out of humiliation. Because of this, Mu Wuxuan did not dare to appear in public and sealed himself in the Prime Minister's residence. Only Yun Luofeng knew that this matter had something to do with Yun Xiao. Only Yun Luofeng would have the motive to attack Gao Ling. However, Yun Luofeng did not question Yun Xiao's actions. She pretended not to know anything and began to cultivate every day until nightfall. Fortunately, her tireless cultivation was also successful, and her cultivation was advancing by leaps and bounds, in the backyard of the general's residence. Yun Luofeng frowned and looked at the young girl walking in front of him. He asked in confusion, "Fenger, where are you taking me?" The young girl slowly turned her head and smiled evilly. "You'll know when we get there. Now, prepare yourself, I have a big surprise for you." Surprise? Yun Luo's old face glowed with pride. "You little girl, did you fill up my treasury again?" "Ha ha ha, my granddaughter is more capable. Quick, take me to the treasury." Ever since he learned about his granddaughter's medical skills, the old man was no longer as thrifty as before. He desperately began to spend money. Anyway, many people would send money to his house after he spent it all. It would be a waste if he didn't spend it. Anyway, the money was earned by his granddaughter. Shouldn't he be filial to the old man? Yun Luofeng's face was full of black lines. This surprise isn't in the silver treasury. You'll know once you come with me. No longer in the treasury? The old man frowned again. Since it wasn't money, what kind of surprise could it be? As he was thinking, the old man suddenly noticed that the girl in front of him had stopped. He couldn't help but be stunned. We've arrived? That's right. The young girl slowly turned her head and raised the corners of her lips in a demonic manner. It's been more than half a year since I established the Steel Flame Legion. Grandpa, it's time to show you my power. At the same time, I'll let you see someone. The surprise that this little girl was talking about was the Legion? The old man was stunned once again. This Legion had only been established for half a year and it shouldn't have become very powerful. After all, no one knew the talents of the previous members better than he did. If that was the case, what did this little girl mean? Chapter 157. Seeing that the young girl had opened the entrance to the underground tunnel, Yun Luo returned to his senses and followed Yun Luofeng down the stairs without any hesitation. Over the past 6 months, the old man had not come to the underground training ground so as not to disturb Yun Luofeng's interest. Now, when he saw how luxurious the training ground was, he was completely shocked. The enormous training ground was divided into a few rings. These rings were constructed in a strict and dignified manner. From afar, it gave off a sense of grandeur. Other than that, there were countless houses for people to stay in the training ground. It was warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It was very comfortable. Little girl, how big of a hole did you dig? Why didn't you notice anything when you dug such a big training ground? The old man looked at Yun Luofeng in shock. He found it hard to believe that this little girl had dug such a big hole without anyone noticing. A project like this could not have been completed without a few months. It's all thanks to this little fella's help. Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly. Just as she finished speaking, a little head peeked out from her sleeve. Its big and adorable eyes scanned the surroundings before stopping on Yun Luofeng and it squeaked twice. This is a gold-seeking rat? The old man was even more shocked, and it's a low-rank high spiritualist at that? Impossible. Gold-seeking rats were the most useless of spiritual beasts. It was said that they would never be able to break through to an intermediate beginner spiritualist, so how could they become a high spiritualist? Could it be that he had been wrong all this while? It just broke through to become a high spiritualist yesterday. Yun Luofeng gently stroked Milk Tea's little head and raised the corners of his lips. Of course, this little fella isn't a surprise for you. I've brought you here today mainly to let you meet someone. At that moment, a voice suddenly rang out from behind, causing the puzzled old man's body to stiffen. Father, you're here? The old man turned his head stiffly. Suddenly, a handsome and elegant face appeared in front of him. Chinya, weren't you at the back of the mountain? Why are you here at the training ground? Also, your leg. It was only at this moment that Yun Luo suddenly realized that the man in front of him wasn't sitting on the wheelchair but was standing in front of him. His legs were very straight and his body was tall and slender. His handsome face no longer had its usual sadness and was replaced by a confident smile. Just like the talented young man who had swept the entire Long Yuan nation 10 years ago. What's going on? The old man's voice trembled slightly. You too, tell me, what happened? Grandfather. Yun Luofeng looked at Yun Qingya and slowly walked in front of the old man. He smiled and said, actually, half a year ago, I had already helped second uncle recover from his injuries. However, because he had been paralyzed for 10 years, he couldn't walk like an ordinary person and had to learn to walk from the beginning. That's why I didn't tell you about this matter. Now that second uncle can move freely, it's time for me to tell you everything. The old man's entire body trembled. The gaze he used to look at Yun Qingya turned from shock to excitement. Then, he suddenly thought of something and turned around. He grabbed Yun Luofeng's clothes and shouted angrily, You damned girl, what else are you hiding from me? Hurry up and tell me everything. Chapter 158. At this moment, the old man was furious. He glared angrily at Yun Luofeng, as if he wanted to tear the other party apart and eat him alive. In the eyes of those who didn't know better, they would think that this girl was his enemy. Yun Luofeng looked at the old man's hand that was holding onto her clothes and raised his eyebrows. I haven't told you yet. My second uncle has already become the commander of the Iron Man Legion. For the past 6 months, he has been helping me train these people. Other than that, what else? The old man snorted unhappily. This girl had really hidden a lot of things from him in the past half a year. She hadn't even told her that Xinya's leg had been cured. How could this not make the old man angry? Unfortunately, he couldn't bear to hit her, so he could only roar a few times to vent the unwillingness in his heart. This. Yun Luofeng said guiltily, you'll know when you see the people of the Iron Flame Legion. As he spoke, a series of neat and uniform footsteps came from behind him. It was as if they were trained soldiers, and it immediately attracted the old man's attention. The old man let go of the girl in his hand and turned to look at the people who were marching over. When he saw the dignified figures of those people, his eyes were filled with shock. These people are the useless trash who were like mud half a year ago. This group of people were soldiers who had received formal training. They were not inferior to the royal army. But half a year ago, they were just a group of trash at the bottom. It's all thanks to second uncle's good training. Yun Luofeng raised the corner of her lips. Under the leadership of her second uncle, the Iron Man Legion had gradually grown up, and the Flame Legion was not bad either. Even she was surprised by the achievements and perseverance of these people. Yun Xinya smiled. Her handsome eyes were filled with gentleness as she looked at Yun Luofeng. No, my training is only a supplementary effect. The real reason why these people have grown up is because of Feng'er. If it wasn't for the marrow cleansing medicine and spirit gathering medicine that Feng'er took out, they wouldn't have grown so quickly. At first, Yun Luo only noticed the tenacity of these people. Now that he heard Yun Xingya's words, he used his mental strength to probe the strength of these people. When he felt the power of the entire army, the old man was dumbfounded. He stood there like a tree stump. How was this possible? The imperial family had also probed the talents and foundations of these people. None of them would be able to break through to the rudimentary intermediate spiritualist stage in their lifetime. Now, everyone in the army had become intermediate spiritualists, and a few of them had even broken through to advanced spiritualists. His strength was equal to that of a general like him. One had to know that the most powerful person in Long Yuan country was only a high spiritual warrior. Therefore, if Yun Luofeng brought out the strength of this legion, it would surely cause an intense wave of shock. Perhaps even the people behind the royal family would be lured out. Feng'er, tell me, how did you do it? The old man slowly turned to look at Yun Luofeng. One could imagine how shocked he was. These people's aptitudes are very low, so how did you help them become advanced spiritualists? Yun Luofeng smiled disapprovingly. Her eyes were filled with confidence. I've said it before, I don't choose people based on talent. Even if they are trash, I can turn them into geniuses. As for the marrow cleansing liquid, it could cleanse one's marrow and bones, and reforge one's innate talent. If they can't even break through under such conditions, then there's no need for me to form this army. Chapter 159. The old man's breathing tightened. Excitement was written all over his face. He rubbed his fists and said with a smile, "Little girl, is that marrow cleansing liquid really that effective? Then this old man plans to live in this place from now on and bathe in the marrow cleansing liquid every day." His expression as he looked at the marrow cleansing liquid was as if he was facing a top-grade beauty. His gaze was lustful and wretched, as if he wanted to strip off the clothes of that top-grade beauty. Yun Xingya's face was filled with black lines. She subconsciously wanted to pretend that she didn't know this old man. She had never seen an old man look at a pool of water with a lustful gaze. This was too embarrassing. This. Yun Luofeng was silent for a moment before he raised his lips and said, "If you like, you can come here and bathe in the marrow cleansing liquid. However, you are already old, and the marrow cleansing liquid does not have much of an effect on you, so I have prepared another gift for you." As soon as she finished speaking, Yun Luofeng reached into her sleeves and pulled out a vermilion fruit. When the old man saw the vermilion fruit, he couldn't help but be stunned. Red fruit? Wasn't this the red fruit that the people from the medical pavilion had given her? It was said that it took a year for the red fruit to bear fruit. It had only been half a year, and the red fruit had already successfully borne fruit? Yun Luofeng shrugged his shoulders. In theory, this should be a red fruit, but I'm used to calling it a spirit fruit. As for its effects, you'll know when you eat it. The old man didn't hesitate. He took the fruit Yun Luofeng passed to him and took a bite. Immediately, a fragrant aroma flowed through his mouth, causing his eyes to suddenly brighten. In a few bites, he finished the spirit fruit. This red fruit tastes pretty good. When the time comes, prepare more of them and put them in my study. When I'm greedy, I can use them to satisfy my cravings. The old man wiped his mouth, his chrysanthemum-like old face full of smiles. Yun Luofeng's face darkened. What did this old fellow think the spirit fruit was? To satisfy his cravings? If his words were to spread, there would probably be many people on the continent who would gang up on him. Boom! Suddenly, a powerful wave of spiritual energy rushed into the old man's dantian and fiercely collided against the barrier. In an instant, the originally solid barrier was like a thin piece of paper. It was broken by the powerful spiritual energy and reached a new realm. The old man was dumbfounded. Yun Xingye was stunned, even the members of the Steel Flame Legion were astonished. They looked at the dumbfounded old man, not understanding what was going on. Why did General Yun break through without any warning? Looks like the effects of this spirit fruit are pretty good. The girl's lazy laughter entered his ears, causing the stiff old man to raise his head mechanically. His voice began to tremble at this moment, and his words were clearly filled with disbelief. What's going on? That barrier of his had existed for many years, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not advance a single level. But why did he actually break through now? This was simply impossible. I said before, not only will I help second uncle stand up, I will also think of a way to help you break through. Yun Luofeng chuckled. His demonic eyes stared at Yun Luofeng as the corners of his lips curled up. Now, I have fulfilled my promise. Boom! Thunder pierced through the ears. After receiving Yun Luofeng's acknowledgement, Yun Luofeng was once again dumbfounded. He thought back to how he had asked Yun Luofeng to give him the red fruit as a snack. It was simply ridiculous. Chapter 160. A spiritual fruit that could allow advanced spiritualists to break through was much rarer than the simple red fruit. Perhaps his granddaughter could only produce one of them. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, a burst of crazy laughter resounded throughout the underground training ground. His laughter was filled with madness, but it also revealed the excitement in his heart. How many years has it been? How many years has it been since I broke through? Gao Tu, you dog emperor, just you wait. I'll make you pay for everything that happened back then. Yun Luofeng glanced at the crazy old man, then he looked at the people from the army. There are 3 people from the Iron Steel Army that broke through to become paramount spiritualists, and 2 from the Flame Army. The 5 of you can come forward to receive a spiritual fruit, but I suggest that you consume it when you're an intermediate high spiritualist to use it to break through. The old man, who was laughing hysterically, was caught off guard when he heard Yun Luofeng's words. As a result, he could not hold back his laughter and choked on his own saliva. His face flushed, and he coughed violently. Bastard, how many fucking spiritual fruits do you have? The old man finally caught his breath and glared at Yun Luofeng furiously. Earlier on, the young lady said that she was going to give him a surprise, but he thought that it was more like a shock. If he was not careful, he might not be able to withstand the surprise and suffer a heart attack. Yun Luofeng kept quiet for some time before he answered conservatively, I'll probably be able to give one to each member of the Iron Flame Army. Yun Luofeng's heart twitched when he heard what Yun Luofeng said, and it almost stopped beating. He initially thought that Yun Luofeng would only have one of such a magical fruit at most. Who knew that the young fellow would be able to get so many of them without a sound? Enough for each member of the Iron Flame army to have one? As if he thought that Yun Luofeng was not shocked enough, Yun Luofeng added, even if these fruits are used up, I can still get more. Therefore, if the Yun family's protectors break through to become advanced spiritualists, they can also come to me to receive a spiritual fruit, provided that they're loyal to the Yun family. Yun Luo completely went crazy. He once again grabbed Yun Luofeng's clothes and said angrily, "You little girl, why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier to show your filial respect to your grandfather? Quick, give me another 180, the more the better. In any case, I won't complain about having more." The corners of Yun Luofeng's eyebrows slightly slanted upwards. He raised his hand and slapped away Yun Luo's claw. The spirit fruit will only be effective the first time you eat it. After that, no matter how much you eat, it won't be of much use. Can't I eat it like a fruit? The old man rolled his eyes and reached out his hand domineeringly. Quick, hand over the spirit fruit. Yun Luofeng's heart twitched. She took out 2 more spirit fruits from her sleeve and placed them in the old man's hand. What else? I only brought 3 with me. I don't have any more now. I'll give you all 3. I'll bring the rest to your study tomorrow. Hearing Yun Luofeng's words, Yun Luo looked at her suspiciously and asked doubtfully, "Are you telling the truth? More real than pearls?" Yun Luofeng nodded with a sincere look on her face. "If that's the case, I'll let you off for now." Yun Luo kept the spirit fruits and scoffed. "Remember, if you have anything good in the future, show your filial respect to your grandfather first." Chapter 161. Yun Luofeng finally heaved a sigh of relief and replied with a smile, "Understood. In the future, no matter what good things I have, I'll be the first to bring them to you." "That's more like it." The old man smiled in satisfaction. "All right, I won't disturb you anymore. Train well, I'll be leaving first." Ha ha ha. Yun Luofeng laughed heartily and walked out of the training room. Second uncle. After Yun Luofeng saw that the old man had left, he turned to look at the handsome and elegant man. "I still have 5 spiritual fruits here, so you can distribute them to the members who have become advanced spiritualists. If anyone else becomes an advanced spiritualist in the future, remember to inform me." Yun Qingye smiled, "All right. By the way, second uncle, remember to take the medicine I gave you on time. Tomorrow, I have something to do and will have to leave Long Yuan country. When I return, I'll help you repair your dantian and restore your strength." Yun Qingye was stunned. She looked at Yun Luofeng with excitement. "Xiao Fenger, you said that I can recover my strength?" "That's right." Yun Luofeng nodded. "Not only can I help you recover your strength, I can also make you stronger. The prerequisite is that you can't stop using the medicine I give you. When I return, I'll be able to help you recover your strength." At this moment, Yun Qingye's heart was in turmoil. Ever since he had been injured 10 years ago, he had never thought that he would be able to recover his strength. Now that he was able to stand up again, he was already satisfied. However, he had never expected that his little niece would have the ability to help him recover his strength. This was something he did not even dare to think about. "Xiao Fenger, I really don't know how to thank you." Yun Luofeng blinked and smiled evilly. "We're family, there's no need to thank me. Second uncle, no matter what, I'll cure you completely." Looking at the young girl's determined eyes, Yun Qingye smiled. His handsome face was filled with confidence and pride. "Xiao Fenger, with you in the Yun family, why should we worry about not being strong? Second uncle believes in you and will wait for your return." The members of the Steel Flame Legion were also filled with gratitude, and their determination deepened. There was no other reason than that Yun Luofeng had given them such a precious treasure to consume. It was also because of the spiritual fruits that those who had yet to break through to advanced spiritualists were motivated to work hard. Perhaps even Yun Luofeng did not expect her actions today to make everyone in the army work so hard that they would forget to eat and sleep just to break through to paramount spiritualists. The next day. Dawn. A furious roar resounded through the skies of the Yun family, reverberating for a long time. "Yun Luofeng, you damned girl, you actually dared to run away. When you return, see if I don't smack your butt." This voice was heard by everyone in the Yun family, causing them to jump in fright. They did not understand how the eldest miss had provoked the general, causing the general to lose his temper. It seemed that ever since the general came back, he had been infuriated by eldest miss every 2 or 3 days. They were really afraid that one day, the general would be angered to death by her. Yun Luo was furious. That girl had promised to deliver 180 spirit fruits to his study today. In the end, he had waited for an entire morning, but the young girl had not appeared. Unable to wait any longer, he had personally gone to look for her. However, he had only found a letter in the young girl's room. The letter stated that the little girl had run away from home. Of course, Yun Luo was just joking. He could not bear to actually smack Yun Luofeng's butt. Even if the young girl lost a single strand of hair, his heart would ache for a long time, let alone beating her up. Chapter 162. Flowing Gold Country. It was once one of the most powerful countries on the mainland. However, a few years ago, the general of Flowing Gold Country, Yi Bufan, had been defeated by Yun Luo and was forced to hand over the third prince, Yi Ling, as a hostage. From then on, Flowing Gold Country could only exist as a vassal country to Long Yuan Country. However, in just half a year's time, an organization called the Windfall Pavilion had suddenly appeared in Flowing Gold Country. It was said that the Windfall Pavilion had information on every country on the mainland and was extremely powerful. In just half a year's time, they had become a household name and their name had spread far and wide. However, many organizations had wanted to find out who the pavilion master of the Windfall Pavilion was. However, the pavilion master was very mysterious. No one even knew her name, let alone see her face. At this moment, in the Windfall Pavilion, when Yun Luofeng had just stepped into the hall, a figure as light as the wind quickly pounced towards Yun Luofeng. "My lady, I've missed you so much." Qin Yan became excited the moment she saw Yun Luofeng. Unfortunately, when the white-clothed girl in front of her saw her pouncing figure, she dodged to the side without a second thought. With a plop, Qin Yan didn't have time to stop her steps. She was caught off guard and fell to the ground. "My lady." The little servant girl raised her little face and stared resentfully at Yun Luofeng. "Qin Yan, I'm here on official business. I don't have time to catch up with you." Yun Luofeng raised the corners of his lips and a demonic smile hung on his lips. The little girl before him was the newly promoted commander of the Flame Regiment, Qin Yan. In the last half a year, she'd sent Yi Ling and Qin Yan to Flowing Gold Kingdom to establish the Windfall Pavilion and gather information in the world for the sake of finding the true culprit that had killed her parents. Now that she'd almost made some progress, she'd rushed to Flowing Gold Kingdom just now. "That's right, where's Yi Ling? Why haven't I seen him come out?" Yun Luofeng scanned his surroundings but did not see Yi Ling. An undetectable light flashed across his jet-black eyes. Qin Yan's expression changed slightly when she heard this. "My lady, Yi Ling has been discovered." "What's going on?" Yun Luofeng turned to look at Qin Yan. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Qin Yan bit her lip and a hint of anger appeared on her delicate features. A few days ago, Ya Ling had bumped into his half-brother, the second Prince Ya Luo, on the street. Ya Luo had recognized him and his arrival in Flowing Gold Country had been exposed. "My lady, do you know how outrageous his brother is? His talent and strength were clearly inferior to Yi Ling's, but he relied on the fact that his mother was doted on and insulted Yi Ling. How infuriating." Seeing the young servant girl's angry eyes, Yun Luofeng smiled faintly and asked, "Yi Ling was humiliated, not you. Why are you so angry? Don't tell me you and Yi Ling." "Miss." Qin Yan hurriedly interrupted Yun Luofeng. She angrily stamped her foot, her face flushed red. "What nonsense are you talking about? Yi Ling and I are only companions, that's why I can't bear to see others humiliate him. It's really not what you think." "Is that so?" Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly and his jet-black eyes fell upon Qin Yan. "Qin Yan, even though Yi Ling is the third prince of Flowing Gold Country, you are no ordinary little servant girl. You are someone I trust. If the two of you are truly in love with each other, I will make the decision on your behalf regarding this marriage." Qin Yan's heart trembled fiercely, and her clear eyes were filled with deep emotion. Chapter 163. Ever since the young miss had failed to hang herself, she had changed into a completely different person. However, the young miss now not only made her feel very reliable, she liked her even more now. Young miss, I know that you're doing this for my own good. However, even if he and I are in love, the Emperor of Flowing Gold Country would never allow it. The imperial family values a marriage of equal social status. A marriage of equal social status? Yun Luofeng laughed gently. Both of you are members of the Steel Flame Regiment, so this is what they call a marriage of equal social status. If the two of you truly love each other, the Emperor of Flowing Gold Country would never be able to stop you. My, Yun Luofeng's, people are never unworthy of anyone. If this is a one-sided love, I cannot help you. After all, matters of the heart cannot be forced. Qin Yan nodded and a bitter smile appeared on her delicate face. Young miss, I understand. Yun Luofeng patted Qin Yan's shoulder soundlessly. Let's go, take me to Yiling. I have a few things to understand from him. Yes, young Mississippi. Under Yun Luofeng's reassurance, Qin Yan regained her cheerfulness. She blinked and giggled as she walked out of Zephyr Pavilion. Yun Luofeng shook his head in exasperation as he stared at the little servant girl's joyful figure. A demonic smile appeared on the corners of his lips before he followed Qin Yan out without any hesitation. In Flowing Gold Country, once a prince comes of age, he will leave the imperial palace and establish his own family. At this moment, Yiling was sitting in his study in the third prince's mansion. He was holding a book in his hand, but his mind was not on the book at all. He looked rather absent-minded. Just then, a squeaking sound suddenly rang out from the side of his feet, instantly attracting his attention. When Yiling noticed the white hamster squeaking at his feet, his eyes widened and he asked in astonishment, "Milk tea, what are you doing here? Could it be?" As if remembering something, Yiling's eyes filled with excitement. He slowly turned his head and his gaze gradually turned towards the door. In that instant, the young girl in white who was leaning against the door entered his sight. The young girl crossed her arms and leaned lazily against the door railing. The corners of her lips curled into a beautiful smile. Her robes were as white as snow and fluttered in the gentle breeze. Yiling, long time no see. I didn't expect you to become the third prince of the Flowing Gold Kingdom. Yiling withdrew the excitement in his eyes and replaced it with respect. He hurriedly rose from his seat and greeted the young lady at the door. "Master, why have you come?" Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. Her white robes fluttered like a gentle breeze and landed on the chair in front of the desk. "What, you don't welcome me?" The young girl brushed her white robes and crossed her legs. She picked up the brush on the table and played with it in her hand. She looked at Yiling with an evil smile in her black eyes, lazy and wanton. "However, I think you're doing a good job as the third prince." She scanned the surroundings of the study, and the smile on her lips deepened. Yiling laughed bitterly. "Master, don't tease me. What's so good about the third prince? It's not as glorious as being the deputy pavilion master of the Windfall Pavilion." "Mistress, I'd rather be the deputy pavilion master of the Windfall Pavilion than be the third prince." The girl burst into laughter and raised her eyebrows slightly. "Tell me, what happened? You've suddenly returned to the Flowing Gold Kingdom. Did the royal family not suspect you?" Chapter 164. Yiling shook her head, her heart filled with bitterness. "I told them that Long Yuan country had sent me to seduce the eldest lady of the general's residence and I took the opportunity to escape. They did not suspect me and allowed me to return to the country. However, my return has offended some people's interests and they have sent many assassins to kill me. Fortunately, my cultivation base has improved by leaps and bounds over the past 6 months, so the assassins have not succeeded." Yun Luofeng lowered his eyes and continued to play with the brush in his hand. An undetectable glint flashed across his dark eyes. "Yiling, how is the matter I asked you to investigate? Who was the one who killed my parents that year?" More than 10 years ago, the Yin couple had come up with a plan when they were fighting against Flowing Gold Country. Unfortunately, this plan had been leaked by Prime Minister Mu and was used by the enemy, causing them to fall into a trap. However, the person who had killed the couple was someone else. That person must be related to the royal family of Flowing Gold Country. Yun Luofeng had sent Yiling to Flowing Wind Country to find the real killer. There is some progress in this matter. Yiling glanced at Yun Luofeng. Give me some time and I will find out the truth. However, I can tell you that this matter is related to Empress Rong. Empress Rong was the mother of the second prince, Yi Luo. She had even instigated the emperor to send Yiling to Long Yuan country as a hostage. During this time, she had helped her son become the crown prince. Obviously, her efforts were about to pay off. It was at this time that Yiling returned. How could Empress Rong not hate her? If it were not for the fact that the entire court supported Yiling and that General Yi Bufan was Yiling's uncle, her son would have become the crown prince long ago. Yiling, who had been taken as a hostage, had dared to return to the country. Seeing that her efforts were about to be wasted, imperial concubine Rong could no longer sit still. This was the reason for the assassination every night. What Yun Luofeng did not expect was that even the death of his parents had something to do with her. A murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Yun Luofeng stopped playing with the brush and said, Yiling, I will be staying in Flowing Gold Country for the time being. However, it would be inconvenient for me to stay in Drifting Wind Pavilion. Therefore, I will stay in your third prince's residence and use this opportunity to find out who killed my parents. Yes, master. Yiling replied respectfully. From the moment he had pledged his loyalty to her half a year ago, his life belonged to her. Even if she wanted him to destroy the entire Flowing Gold Country, he would not refuse any of her orders. During the time I stay in your mansion, don't call me master. Yun Luofeng's eyes flashed a few times and his lips curled into a smile. You can just call me by my name. In the Long Yuan country, Yun Luofeng's name could be said to be a household name. There was no one who did not know of her. But now that she was in the Flowing Gold Country, there wouldn't be anyone who had heard of her reputation as trash. Hence, she allowed Yiling to call her by her name. This. Yiling hesitated for a moment. I'll call you Miss Yun. I really can't call you by your name. He didn't dare to offend his superior and call his master's name directly. Even if he was given 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to do so. All right. Yun Luofeng slowly stood up and stretched lazily. I'm a little tired. Help me prepare a room first. I'm going to rest for a while. If there's any news, notify me. With that, she strode out of the study. Chapter 165. What did you say? In the brothel, there was singing and dancing. Inside a private room, a handsome man was hugging women on his left and right. He narrowed his eyes as he stared at his confidante standing in front of him. A sinister light flashed across his eyes. My third royal brother has always had his eyes on the top of his head. Did a woman really stay in the third prince's residence yesterday? Reporting to the second prince, this matter is absolutely true. I did see a beautiful woman dressed in white enter the third prince's residence. Furthermore, that woman was extremely beautiful, even more beautiful than the top courtesan of Red Flower Brothel. The confidant licked his lips in a vulgar manner, his mind still recalling that beautiful face. If he could obtain such a woman, even if it was just for one night, he would be perfectly satisfied. Oh. Yi Luo's eyes brightened, even more beautiful than the top courtesan of Red Flower Brothel? That boy Yiling actually has such luck with women? However, I think that woman was staying in the second prince's residence without any status. She must not be from a good family. She must be the new top courtesan of some brothel. This confidant had followed him for many years and had enjoyed many beautiful women with him. But now, the woman who was openly staying in the second prince's residence was praised by him like this. She must be an extremely beautiful woman. Only he had the right to enjoy such a beautiful woman. Who did Yiling think he was? Immediately send an invitation to Yiling. Tell him that I invite him to the residence for a gathering. Yes, Your Royal Highness the second prince. The confidant joined his fists and retreated from the luxurious private room. It was as if the words of his trusted aide had made Yi Luo's mind become active and made him lose interest in the beauties around him. He waved his hand to dismiss the women around him, and a greedy glint flashed across his glowing eyes. He was very curious as to how beautiful that woman was. Even the top courtesan of Red Flower Brothel was outshone by her. Early morning. The morning light shone through the entire residence. It was so warm that it made people feel happy. As soon as Yun Luofeng entered the courtyard, he saw the handsome young man sitting in the pavilion. The young man's gaze was fixed on a certain spot in the courtyard, and there was an undercurrent in his eyes. She followed the youth's gaze, and in an instant, the little servant girl who was playing in the stream fell into her eyes. In that instant, she came to a sudden realization. So this little girl was not having a one-sided love? These two people seemed to have a chance. Yi Ling, she raised the corner of her lips and called out softly. Inside the pavilion, the youth who was staring blankly at the smoke was pulled back from his thoughts by this voice. He hurriedly came back to his senses and turned to the beautiful young lady who was walking towards him. He was a little apprehensive in his heart. "Master, you've come? Yi Ling, you like Qin Yan?" "Ah." Yi Ling was stunned by Yun Luofeng's straightforwardness. A crimson blush flashed across his fair face and his fingers tugged at his robes nervously. "I only think that Qin Yan is very cute, like a little sister." "I don't, Yi Ling, I've experienced many things. There are some things that can never be hidden from my eyes." Yun Luofeng turned his gaze away from Qin Yan and slowly turned towards Yi Luo. He asked, "I'll ask you one thing. You are the third prince of Flowing Gold Country and Qin Yan is only a little servant girl. If your father opposes you, what choice would you make?" Yi Ling fell silent and his lips curled into a bitter smile. "Father? Can he be considered a father? No one can stop me from doing what I want to do, including him." Chapter 166. When she said her last sentence, Yi Ling's eyes were filled with determination and her tone was unyielding. She had the courage to not fear anyone. "If that's the case, I can rest assured." Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. "Yi Ling, although you and Qin Yan are both my subordinates, but compared to you who had plotted against me, Qin Yan is more important to me. She may be a servant, but in reality, she is no different from my family. In the years before my grandfather returned, she was the only one who never left me and even used her body to block the attacks of others for me." "I know," Yi Ling smiled. "In these 2 years, even though I was a hostage, there were times when I was allowed out for a short period of time under the supervision of the palace guards. Once, I saw you being bullied and beaten on the streets. It was Qin Yan who used her body to protect you. When I saw this scene, my heart was filled with admiration for her. I never thought that I would have the chance to work with her one day. That servant was loyal to her master, stubborn and tenacious. Perhaps it was because of this that he, who had always had his eyes on the top of his head, had set his sights on her." "It's good that you understand," Yun Luofeng nodded. "If you hurt Qin Yan in the future, I won't let you off. However, other than this matter with Qin Yan, I will stand by your side and give you a chance to kill your enemy with your own hands." Yi Ling's heart trembled and a complicated mix of emotions welled up in his heart. Half a year ago, he had helped the emperor of Long Yuan country to plot against her. He never thought that she would disregard the past and not only give him unparalleled power, she even gave him a chance to kill his enemy with his own hands. As for himself, he was afraid that he would never be able to repay her kindness in this lifetime. "Your Highness, the third prince." Just as Yi Ling was sighing in his heart, a servant hurried over and respectfully handed an invitation to Yi Ling. "The second prince has sent you an invitation." Yi Ling's face darkened and he took the invitation from the servant. After reading the contents of the invitation, his expression turned even uglier. "What happened?" Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow and turned his gaze towards Yi Ling as he asked. Yi Ling took a deep breath and said, "Yi Luo has invited me to his residence for a gathering." "And then?" If it was just an invitation, Yi Ling wouldn't have been so angry. Hearing Yun Luofeng's question, Yi Ling pursed his thin lips tightly, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. "He asked me to bring you along." Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin and smiled evilly. "Since someone has invited us with such hospitality, it would be inexcusable for us not to go." Yi Ling had originally wanted to address Yun Luofeng as his master, but he suddenly remembered that there was still a servant in the courtyard who had come to deliver the news. He swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue and sighed helplessly. Miss Yun, you probably don't know this Yi Luo's personality. This fellow is extremely lustful. Aside from visiting brothels, he has also kidnapped countless young girls from good families. Judging from his tone, he must have seen you come to my residence and become interested in you. So what? Yun Luofeng chuckled, and there was an evil smile in his eyes. Yi Ling, let's go. Take me to see that so-called second prince. Seeing that Yun Luofeng had made up his mind, Yi Ling did not say anything more and nodded slightly. All right. He was very confident in his master, but when he thought of Yi Luo's wretched look, he was very displeased. Was his master someone that a scum like him could spy on? However, Yi Ling also knew that the reason why Yun Luofeng had invited him was because Yi Ling was Empress Rong's son, and Empress Rong was related to the couple's death. Chapter 167. Flowing Gold Country. On the bustling street, Yun Luofeng, who was walking amongst the crowd, seemed to have noticed something. She slowly turned her head and frowned at the bustling crowd behind her. Master, what's the matter? Yi Ling saw that Yun Luofeng had stopped and a trace of confusion flashed across her eyes. She turned to look at her. Yun Luofeng looked away and shook her head, nothing. She did not know if it was just her imagination, but she felt that ever since she left Long Yuan country, someone had been following her. But every time she turned around, she could not see the figure following her. Could it be that she had been too tired recently and was hallucinating? Yun Luofeng rubbed her forehead. Let's continue walking. All right. Ye Ling's eyes still carried a sense of doubt. However, when he saw that Yun Luofeng had no intention of answering his question, he did not probe any further. His handsome features sank as he said, Master, we'll be arriving soon. When the time comes, remember to stay away from that scum, Yi Luo. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile at Yi Ling's reminder. Her smile was languid and demonic as she continued walking. As Empress Rong was highly favored by the emperor, compared to the cold and cheerless third prince's palace, the second prince's palace was bustling with visitors. Countless rascals tried to build a good relationship with the royal family so that they could be put in an important position in the future. At this moment, in the courtyard, Yi Luo was hugging women on both sides and flirting with the women next to him. His expression was vulgar and even his hands were placed on the women's sensitive parts. The nobles of Flowing Gold Country seemed to be used to this and no one criticized Yi Luo for being offensive. Suddenly, Yi Luo's eyes narrowed and he stared fixedly in a certain direction. A deep sense of awe appeared in his eyes. The crowd followed his gaze and in an instant, a snow-white dress fell into their eyes. Their eyes were as shocked as Yi Luo's. This young girl was very young, around 14 or 15 years of age. Her face was extremely beautiful and her robes were whiter than snow and fluttered in the wind. At that moment, their breathing stopped for a moment, and even their hearts almost couldn't calm down. There was a smile on the young girl's face from beginning to end. She was bewitching and wanton, and her pair of pitch-black eyes were like the stars in the night sky. One couldn't see the bottom of them at a glance, but they were deeply attracted by her eyes, unable to be pulled away. Where did such a beautiful girl come from? And by the side of the third prince? Could she be his concubine? As for why he called the girl in white a concubine, that was because even though the third prince was not favored by the emperor, he was still very talented. As a noble grandson of the emperor, his wife had to be a princess or a minister. An unknown girl was only qualified to be a concubine. Third royal brother, you're finally here. Ha ha ha, Yi Luo laughed heartily as he walked towards Yi Ling. His face carried a hypocritical smile as he said, all these years you were a hostage, I've missed you dearly. I've even begged royal father many times to take you back. Unfortunately, royal father never had the guts to ask Long Yuan country for you. In the face of Yi Luo's hypocrisy, Yi Ling sneered, is that so? Then I really have to thank you. Ha, there's no need for us to be so polite. Yi Luo laughed and tried to pat Yi Ling's shoulder. But just as his hand was about to land on Yi Ling's shoulder, Yi Ling moved to the side and avoided his touch. Chapter 168. Faced with Yi Ling's actions, a vicious light flashed across Yi Luo's eyes, but the smile on his face did not change. Royal brother, long time no see, why are you so distant from me? That's right, I wonder who this lady is. His gaze turned towards Yun Luofeng and a stunned look appeared in his eyes. Yi Ling's face sank. Second royal brother, Lady Yun is not someone you can violate. Hee. Yi Luo laughed evilly and said, Third royal brother, I didn't think that you would protect your woman like this. I don't have any other intentions, I just want to know which family's daughter this lady is. Hearing Yi Luo refer to his master as his woman, Yi Ling's heart almost stopped beating in fright. He quickly turned to look at the young girl and sighed in relief when he saw that she was not angry. This damned brat actually dared to tease me and master like this. If master gets angry, my little life will be over. For some reason, when Yi Luo said those words, Yi Ling felt a chill run down his spine, as if a pair of cold eyes were staring at him from the shadows. It sent a chill down his spine and made every hair on his body stand on end. Yi Luo, be more respectful when you speak. A trace of anger appeared on Yi Ling's face. If you say such things again, don't blame me for being impolite. Ha. Yi Luo laughed disapprovingly. Yi Ling, don't think that I don't know this woman's background. She's just a girl from a brothel. Which family's daughter would stay in a prince's residence without any status? I just wanted to test you with a question. I didn't think that you would fly into such a rage out of humiliation. I will definitely report this matter to Imperial Father. Girl from a brothel? When the young men heard Yi Luo's words, their eyes were no longer as stunned as they had been at the beginning. Instead, they stared at her with lewd and vulgar gazes. She was just a girl from a brothel. Spending a bit of money would make her strip naked and lie on the bed waiting to be taken. A woman like this was not worthy of their respect. Woman, Yi Luo turned to look at Yun Luofeng and licked his dry lips. Being my concubine is better than following Yi Ling. Even though your status is low and you can't obtain the status of a prince's consort, I can give you plenty of love. I guarantee that no one in this prince's residence will dare to bully you. How about it? Only he, the son of the empress, had the right to possess such a beautiful woman. Yi Ling was nothing. Yi Ling finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She clenched her fist tightly and swung it towards Yi Luo with an irresistible force. Bang! Just as Yi Ling's fist was about to reach Yi Luo, a pair of legs kicked towards Yi Luo at an even faster speed. The crowd only heard a muffled sound as his body was thrown out. The girl lifted her foot and stepped on Yi Ling's chest. She looked down at him from above. I'm sorry, I didn't hear a single word you just said. Can you say it again? Even though the white-robed young lady was apologizing, everyone could feel the threat from her body. There was a devilish smile on her face, and her black eyes were wild and arrogant. Men, capture this woman for me. Yi Luo held his breath and roared angrily with an ashen face. No one in the crowd thought that the banquet had not even begun and the two parties were already fighting. A wave of orderly and powerful footsteps suddenly rang out, instantly surrounding Yun Luofeng and Yi Ling. All the guards pulled out their weapons and the atmosphere was cold and solemn. Chapter 169. Yun Luofeng glanced evilly at the guards who had gathered around them. The corners of his lips curled into an angle as he spoke insolently. If you want him dead, then you can make your move. Of course, just the few of you aren't a match for me. Bang! As he spoke, Yun Luofeng pressed his foot on Yi Luo's chest a little harder. Instantly, the sound of bones cracking rang in everyone's ears. Ah! Then, Yi Luo's mournful cry echoed through the air. It was heart-wrenching and made everyone's hair stand on end. You ambushed me. Yi Luo stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. A vicious light flashed in his eyes. What kind of skill is that if you ambushed me? If you really have the ability, then fight me fairly. Yun Luofeng swept his eyes over him. The winner is king and the loser is in the wrong. This is an eternal truth. A loss is a loss. If this was on the battlefield, you would have no chance to retaliate. Yi Luo, the gap between you and Yi Ling is not small. Even if you obtain the throne in the end, your seat will not be stable. The crowd was stunned by the young girl's treasonous words. Her features were wild and her words were unruly. She did not even put the royal family in her eyes. But what right did she have to look down on the royal family? That's right, the noble disciples could feel the contempt in the young girl's eyes. This kind of contempt was as if the throne was placed in front of her and she would not even bother to look at it, but what they did not understand was that she was only an ordinary girl who had given herself to Yi Ling. What gave her the courage to say such words? Yi Ling, let's go. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of his lips and turned to face Yi Ling with a faint smile. All right. Yi Ling was a little surprised but did not say anything else. He nodded and turned his gaze towards the guards surrounding them. He shouted coldly, "Get out of my way." The guards were stunned by Yi Ling's roar and subconsciously made way for her. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the two of them walked out of the courtyard without looking back. It was as if they had only come to say hello. Yi Luo only returned to his senses when the two of them had completely disappeared. He clenched his fists tightly and spat viciously, "Yi Ling, I will never let you go," outside the mansion. Yi Ling couldn't take it anymore and asked, "Mistress, why did you come to the second prince's residence? Are we just going to leave like this?" Yun Luofeng smiled softly. "Since I've finished my business, I should naturally leave." Yi Ling suddenly froze. After a long while, he continued to ask, "But I've always been by your side, and I haven't seen you do anything else. Could it be that whenever you want to do something, you beat Yi Luo up?" He asked for it. Yun Luofeng curled the corners of his lips. "I've come here to survey the terrain. Just a moment ago, I've finished surveying the second prince's residence. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to stay any longer." Yi Ling's eyes were filled with astonishment. "Master, when did you survey the terrain? How come I didn't know? I remember that you didn't go anywhere." Yun Luofeng glanced at Yi Ling and said devilishly, "Yi Ling, you must remember, there are some things that you don't need your eyes to see. You need to use your mental energy. Just now, I have already spread my mental energy throughout the entire mansion. Therefore, every corner of the mansion and every room are imprinted in my mind. Do you understand?" Chapter 170. Yi Ling trembled all over. To be able to cover the entire residence with his mental strength, how powerful did he have to be to do this? "Master, I understand." He slowly took a deep breath, his eyes glinting. "Let's go. I still have to go to the second prince's palace tonight. Now, I'll go back to my palace and rest. I'll save my energy for tonight's event." Yun Luofeng stretched his back lazily. His pitch-black eyes were filled with determination. No matter who killed her parents, they had to pay the price for it. Night fell. In the darkness of the night, an enraged roar rang out in the quiet residence, mixed with monstrous rage. "Yi Ling, and that stinky girl, I'll make you wish you were dead." At that moment, whenever Yi Luo thought of the humiliation he had suffered over the past 100 days, his heart felt as if it were being gnawed at by 10,000 ants, and the pain was unbearable. Blue veins popped out on his tightly clenched fists, and his bulging eyes were bloodshot with rage. "Imperial son, you'd better not be impatient." In a room filled with the scent of sandalwood, a graceful and beautiful woman sat on a chair. She held a cup of tea and sipped it lightly, a light flashing through her beautiful eyes. "General Yi is Yi Ling's uncle. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to deal with Yi Ling. As for the little girl you're talking about, to be able to injure you, her strength is definitely not simple. This kind of woman must not be seen by your imperial father. Otherwise, with your imperial father's lustful nature, he will definitely fall for that little girl. Mother, I can't accept this." Yi Luo clenched his fists and said indignantly, "That woman made me lose face in public. How can I let her off? If I don't complain to my imperial father, I really won't be able to quell my anger. Son, don't you know your imperial father's personality? Whether it's the late Empress Yi or me, we won your imperial father's favor because of our looks, and your imperial father likes the new and hates the old. Since that girl is so stunning, all the more we can't let your imperial father see her. If your imperial father takes a fancy to her, how many women in the world do you think would refuse to become the emperor's concubine? In Empress Rome's mind, the emperor was the supreme being, and there was no woman he couldn't have if he wanted her. Moreover, there was no woman who could refuse to become an emperor's concubine. Mother, then how should I take revenge? Am I really going to let this woman bully me like this? Yi Luo was very unwilling. Right now, he wanted nothing more than to tear Yi Ling into 1,000 pieces and then take that girl in white into his mansion and torture her to death. Imperial son, you must know that there are many cheap women in this world. When they see a man with power and influence, they want to cling to him, wishing that they could kneel down and lick his boots. Therefore, I have an idea. Recently, the imperial family has been trying to curry favor with the people of Luofeng Pavilion. Why don't we give her to the steward of Luofeng Pavilion as a concubine and use this opportunity to build a relationship with Luofeng Pavilion? When your father sees that we are trying to curry favor with the people of Luofeng Pavilion, he will definitely praise you even more. The position of crown prince will then belong to you. Empress Rome lowered her eyes and a cold glint flashed across them. The smile on her lips became sinister and terrifying as she spoke slowly. Isn't that letting her off too lightly? Yi Luo frowned. His imperial mother's actions were not to punish that woman for him, but to give her a chance to become a phoenix from a sparrow. Therefore, how could he accept this? Imperial son, the person I want to build a relationship with is the steward of Luofeng Pavilion, Wu Zhong. This Wu Zhong is over 50 years old and extremely perverted. Anyone who becomes his woman will be tortured to death by him. Moreover, Wu Zhong is lustful, he will definitely be interested in this woman. Chapter 171. Yi Luo was silent for a moment, then asked, what if that woman doesn't agree to seduce the steward of the Windfall Pavilion? Hearing this, Empress Rome sneered, her lips curling into a mocking smile. My son, there is no woman in this world who doesn't want to curry favor with power. Now that the Windfall Pavilion's power is at its peak, even the imperial family has to be courteous to them. Come to think of it, she should thank us for giving her this opportunity. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had the chance to meet the steward of the Windfall Pavilion. Under the deep night sky, the young girl stood against the moonlight. Her clothes were as white as snow and stood out in the dark. However, the silence of the night was somewhat frightening. Only the cicadas in the trees could be heard. Yun Luofeng gazed deeply at the candlelit window, listening to the mother and son's discussion in the room. Her lips curled into a demonic smile and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Tonight, she had originally wanted to come to the second prince's residence to investigate the truth behind her parents' deaths. She didn't expect to hear the mother and son's plot. Moreover, the target of their plot was her. Yi Ling, who is this Wu Zhong? She asked with her back to the handsome youth behind her. Yi Ling was startled, then replied, Wu Zhong is considered an old member of the Windfall Pavilion. He has been with us since the Windfall Pavilion was founded. His strength is at the advanced high spiritualist level, comparable to mine. Yi Ling, pretend that you didn't hear anything today. Perhaps this is a very good test. I want to know if Wu Zhong is loyal to the Windfall Pavilion. Yes, master. Yi Ling replied respectfully. In reality, even now, he was still shocked by Yun Luofeng's actions. Just when they had been spying on the second prince's residence, she had fed the patrolling guards something that had caused the guards to stare blankly, as if they hadn't noticed them at all. It seems that we won't be able to find any more useful information tonight. Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow and slowly turned around. Her voice was demonic and languid. Yi Ling, let's go back first. This subordinate understands. Yi Ling lowered her head and replied respectfully. The two of them had been standing outside the window for an hour, but no one had noticed their presence. Some patrolling guards walked past them without making a sound. If one looked closely, one could see that these guards' eyes were dull, like wooden puppets wandering in the night. Only when Yun Luofeng and Yi Ling left did the eyes of the guards recover their luster bit by bit. However, they seemed to not know that two uninvited guests had just arrived and continued patrolling as usual. Under the desolate curtain of the night, the streets were devoid of the hustle and bustle of the day. Instead, it was deep and serene. Suddenly, milk tea, who was originally in Yun Luofeng's sleeve, seemed to sense something and began to squeak. Its squeak was filled with anxiety and unease, as if warning Yun Luofeng that there was danger here. Miss Yun. Suddenly, a few figures descended from the sky and landed in front of Yun Luofeng. They went straight to the point and said, "Our general invites you to make a trip." General? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows as he looked at the people blocking their way and asked with an evil smile, "General Yi?" "That's right," the soldier replied coldly. "Our general is indeed General Yi." General Yi of Flowing Gold Nation had once been defeated at the hands of his old man, and as a result, his nephew had been reduced to a hostage. Now that General Yi had suddenly invited her, perhaps her identity had been exposed. Chapter 172. All right. Yun Luofeng stroked his chin, his eyes deep in thought. "I'll have to trouble you to lead the way." "I'll go with you." Yi Ling looked at the soldiers under the night sky and stood resolutely by Yun Luofeng's side. "Please." The soldier was still polite and made an affectionate gesture towards Yun Luofeng as he spoke in a grave and stern voice. General's residence. In the study, a middle-aged man stood with his hands clasped behind his back under the cold moonlight. His black hair was tied behind his back, as black as ink. His back was facing the door of the study, his figure straight and stern like a majestic mountain. "Lord General." Suddenly, a voice pulled him back from his thoughts. "The person you've invited is here, but the third prince has also come with her." When Yi Bufan heard the soldier's report, he finally turned around slowly and said with a stern expression, "Let them in." "Yes, Lord General." The soldier accepted the order and retreated. Not long after, a figure in snow-white robes appeared in his line of sight in the dark night sky. When he saw the girl striding in, Yi Bufan's stern eyes became absent-minded and he could not even shift his gaze away from the girl. Alike, too alike. This girl and her mother, Bai Ling, looked as if they had been carved from the same millstone. Both of them were exceedingly beautiful and peerless. "Uncle." Yi Ling saw that her uncle was staring unblinkingly at Yun Luofeng and a trace of anxiety appeared on her face. She glanced at Yun Luofeng and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that he was not angry. Yi Bufan gradually came back to his senses. He looked at Yun Luofeng with a strange look in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at someone through her. "I don't know if I should call you Miss Yun or Yun Luofeng." Yi Bufan's expression was stern, as if the absent-minded look earlier was just an illusion. "It's just a title, General Yi can call me anything you like." Yun Luofeng leaned against the door railing, her dark eyes gazing deeply at Yi Bufan. "But General Yi and I don't know each other. May I know why you've summoned me?" Yi Bufan pondered for a moment before he asked coldly, "I just want to know why you, the granddaughter of the Long Yuan Nation's general, would come to the Flowing Gold Nation. If you say you have no ulterior motives, I will not believe you." Hearing this, Yun Luofeng's eyes narrowed and a dangerous light flashed through them. Sure enough, this fellow knew her identity. And now, even if she wanted to deny it, it would only be superfluous. Furthermore, she had no intention of hiding her identity when she came here. She wanted everyone in the world to know that her goal was to avenge her parents. Looks like General Yi is really well informed. "I, Yun Luofeng, am just a good-for-nothing in Long Yuan Nation, but you can actually see through my identity." Yun Luofeng crossed his arms over his chest, a sinister smile on his face. "That's right, I am Yun Luo's granddaughter, and also the daughter of Yun Yang and Bai Ling." It was like a sledgehammer that fiercely smashed onto Yi Bufan's heart, and it caused him to stagger slightly. She really was Bai Ling's daughter. In fact, ever since Yun Luofeng had entered the Flowing Gold Nation for the first time, she had already caught Yi Bufan's attention. In addition, the people from the third prince's residence all called this young girl Miss Yun, so he had been able to determine her identity. Yi Bufan took a deep breath as he stared at the peerlessly beautiful face in front of him. He calmed the ripples in his heart and stared fixedly at her with his deep, black eyes. Chapter 173. Miss Yun, your parents and I have known each other for a long time. However, we have different masters and we can only meet on the battlefield. So, on account of my friendship with your parents, I advise you to leave the flowing gold country. I can forgive you for entering flowing gold nation, but if you don't leave, don't blame me for being impolite. Buffon's tone was unusually firm and his handsome face was solemn. He was the general of flowing gold nation and protecting the country was his responsibility. Otherwise, he would not have resolutely met the woman he loved on the battlefield more than 10 years ago. Unfortunately, because he was against using schemes against Yun Yang and his wife, he was summoned back by His Majesty before the war was over. He was completely unaware of what happened next. When he finally found out, he heard that Yun Yang and his wife had both died on the battlefield and their souls had returned to their homeland. This grievous news was a huge blow to him and he used it as an excuse to avoid waking up. Even now, his heart still ached. Leave flowing gold nation? Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly. Do you think that since I've come here, I'll leave so easily? Buffon's handsome face darkened. Miss Yun, as long as I'm guarding flowing gold nation, I won't let you do anything to harm flowing gold nation. Even if you're Bai Ling's daughter, I won't let you do as you please. Yun Luofeng glanced at him maliciously. I'm here to avenge my parents. No one can stop me. Yun Luofeng. Buffon was slightly annoyed. When two countries fight, there are bound to be casualties. My flowing gold nation has also lost many people on the battlefield. Do you want to avenge them all? When will there be an end to revenge? Furthermore, there are casualties in battle. These things are unavoidable. That's right. When two countries fight, there are bound to be casualties. Unfortunately, I don't care about the lives of the people in this world. I only care about my family. I don't care how they died, I only know that those who hurt my family are my enemies. Yun Luofeng laughed coldly. Her arrogant eyes were filled with dominance. When will there be an end to revenge? What a joke. She never knew how to repay evil with kindness. She only knew that blood must be paid with blood. Buffon's brows furrowed tightly as anger appeared on his face. As if sensing their general's anger, the surrounding soldiers all drew their weapons, causing the atmosphere to suddenly become tense. Yun Luofeng, do you really insist on doing this? Buffon raised a hand to stop the soldiers and asked coldly. Yun Luofeng didn't answer him, but instead asked a question with a faint smile. General Yi, do you like my mother? The girl's voice was devilishly and languid, as if she was asking something unimportant. But her words caused Buffon's heart to clench fiercely. At this moment, the image of that peerlessly beautiful face that had a faint smile on her face had appeared once more in his mind. Do you know why my mother didn't choose you? Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly, because the person she loved was a man with unyielding character. Yun, be like Yun. Luo, loyal man like other people. If my father was still alive, he would wash the imperial city in blood if anyone dared to touch my mother. He would rather give up his position as a junior general than allow anyone to touch her. Buffon was deeply affected by the girl's words. He staggered and fell on the chair in a sorry state. At that very moment, this mighty general of flowing gold nation had accidentally exposed all his thoughts for all to see. Chapter 174. Yi Ling, let's go. Yun Luofeng took one last look at the disheveled Buffon before he turned and slowly walked towards the boundless night. Yi Ling, who had wanted to leave with Yun Luofeng, did not seem to be able to bear to see Buffon in such a disheveled state. His footsteps paused slightly as he turned his back to the middle-aged man behind him and said, Uncle, seeing that you're my mother's elder brother, I'll tell you this as well. The flowing gold nation's royal family has reached its end. Don't help the emperor kill anymore. After he had finished speaking, he did not spare another glance at the man behind him as he quickly chased after Yun Luofeng. Buzz. Buffon laid on a chair as a bitter smile hung on the corners of his lips. Bai Ling, you didn't choose me back then because I was too fair and strict. Yun Yang, on the other hand, is a hot-blooded man? Could it be that my loyalty to His Majesty was also a mistake? His handsome face was filled with pain as if he had sunk into a deep recollection. If I could relive my life, I would really like to be an ordinary person without any burdens. If that were the case, it wouldn't be impossible for me to fly into a rage for a beauty. Unfortunately, I was never meant to be hot-blooded. Buffon ordered someone to bring him some white wine and downed it in one gulp. All these years, every time he thought of that peerless beauty, he would need to rely on the numbing effects of alcohol to fall asleep. Young mistress, you're back. In the second prince's residence, the little girl, Qing Yan, saw Yun Luofeng return at first glance. Her crescent-shaped eyes lit up as she hurriedly went forward to greet her. She said with a smile, "Young mistress, you've been out for the whole night. You must be tired. I've already asked the kitchen staff to prepare a bowl of soup for you. Drink it before you go to sleep." "All right." Yun Luofeng walked into the room and a fragrant aroma filled the air. She walked towards the bowl of soup and sat in front of the table. She scooped up a spoonful of the fragrant soup and slowly brought it to her mouth. "Why is the meal this time different from the one at noon?" Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow. "This chef isn't bad. His cooking skills are even better than those in the general's mansion. Tomorrow, I'll mention this to Yi Ling and have her send this chef to me. The old man will definitely like it." Yun Luofeng didn't have any other hobbies, but he loved to eat. As such, all the chefs in the general's residence were hired by him at a high price. Yun Luofeng, who was used to eating the food in the general's residence, was not used to the flowing gold nation. He didn't expect that the third prince's residence would have such a skilled chef. Qing Yan looked at Yun Luofeng guiltily. "Miss, this isn't very good. After all, this chef is from Yi Ling's residence, why not?" Yun Luofeng finished his bowl of soup, then took the handkerchief that Qing Yan handed over and wiped the corner of his mouth. He stretched his body and stood up from his seat. "I will make this request to Yi Ling tomorrow. I'm tired now. Qing Yan, you can leave first." "Yes, miss, this servant will take her leave." Qing Yan hurriedly picked up the empty bowl and guiltily walked out. She was thinking about how to cover up this lie. In the courtyard, under the darkness of the night, a man dressed in a long black robe was hidden in the darkness. It was as if he had become one with the night. Qing Yan saw the grim man in the courtyard with one glance. After thinking for a moment, she walked over to him. "I've already followed your instructions and sent the soup to Mississippi. I didn't let her know that you were the one who made it for her." The man's tone was as grim as ever. It was as if besides Yun Luofeng, he wasn't willing to say another word to anyone else. "Give this to her." Chapter 175. Qing Yan was stunned. Her gaze fell upon the plate of grapes in the man's hand and she blinked in astonishment. "Even though Miss doesn't like the food in the third prince's residence, these grapes don't seem to be any different." "Why did you?" "Not the same." "Not the same? How so?" Qing Yan simply could not understand this man. Why does he have to be so mysterious every time? Besides, he has always been following Miss to protect her. Why doesn't he let Miss know? The man's face was expressionless and his voice was low. "I will continue to deliver tomorrow's food." Of course, those grapes were different. Yun Luofeng was very picky about food. For example, when she eats grapes, she must first remove the seeds. Hence, he had used his spiritual energy to remove the seeds from the grapes on the plate. However, he was not interested in explaining this to Qing Yan. "Also, leave these grapes on her table. Don't disturb her rest." The man thought for a moment before he gave another order. His dark eyes looked at the flickering candlelight at the door. He then turned around resolutely and immediately disappeared into the night. Now, he should go and prepare her breakfast tomorrow. "Qing Yan, where did these grapes come from?" "Early morning." The morning light spilled into the room. The young girl was sitting at the table, her slender fingers gently tapping the surface of the table as she asked casually. "Ah." Qing Yan was stunned and replied guiltily, "Yes. I prepared them for you, Mississippi, is that so?" "Then how did you remove the seeds from the grapes?" Yun Luofeng looked at the little girl's delicate and pretty face with a smile that did not reach her eyes as she continued to ask. "What?" The little girl cried out in shock. How could this be? Qin Yen was about to defend herself when she suddenly realized that she had let the cat out of the bag. She quickly shut her mouth and guiltily glanced at Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrows. Her heart quickly caught on to something and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Qin Yen, since when have you helped others lie to me? Is this how you feel about me, Qin Yen thought that Yun Luofeng was angry and felt somewhat anxious. She hurriedly explained, "Young lady, this servant did not intentionally deceive young lady. If someone else wanted to bribe this servant to harm young lady, this servant would definitely not betray young lady. This servant is just. She only felt that Yun Shao and young Miss's relationship was very good, so it was impossible for him to harm young Miss, so she helped him. Moreover, Yun Shao had seen that young Miss had no appetite for the past few days and he didn't want young Miss to know that he was tailing her. Hence, he had sought her out. If it was someone else, she wouldn't have bothered." Pfft, Yun Luofeng laughed out loud. She raised her hand to pinch Qin Yan's cheek and said with a smile, "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Qin Yan, I naturally understand your sincerity towards me. I will pretend to be unaware of this matter. You can continue to contact him." Yun Shao had probably never thought that a plate of grapes would completely expose his whereabouts. Mississippi, Qin Yan bit her lips and stamped her feet in shame and indignation. The young miss was really getting naughtier and naughtier. She actually teased her, causing her to think that the young miss was really angry. "The Empress has arrived, His Royal Highness the Second Prince has arrived." Just as Yun Luofeng stepped out of her room, a sharp voice suddenly fell into her ears. It caused her expression to sink and a murderous intent appeared in her black eyes. Chapter 176. This third prince is really outrageous. I personally came to see him but he didn't even come out to receive me. I really don't know how that dead Empress raised her son. In the back garden, Empress Rong frowned slightly and her elegant face flashed with displeasure as she scoffed. But the third prince's residence was really rich. Look at the rocks, they were actually made from stones from the depths of the North Sea. The herbs in the flower beds were actually the extremely precious scarlet flame grass. Even the bamboo in the bamboo forest could not be bought without tens of millions of gold and silver. It seemed that the Yi family was not as simple as they appeared to be. They must have given the third prince an incalculable amount of gold and silver over the years. Otherwise, he would not have the ability to build such a luxurious residence. Greed flashed across Empress Rong's eyes as she stared fixedly at the treasures that could rival a nation's wealth. What she did not know was that the moment her greed was exposed, Yi Ling had already noticed it. Hee. A cold laugh sounded as if it came from the horizon, causing Empress Rong to hurriedly retract the greed in her eyes. She turned to look at the youth who had just stepped out of the study, her beautiful eyes filled with murderous intent. "This damned brat, he's so lucky. I've already sent so many assassins but none of them managed to kill him. Unfortunately, no matter how lucky he was, he would still end up like his short-lived mother. Sooner or later, he would die in the Yellow Springs. Yi Ling, I've come to see you this time because I have a few matters to discuss with you." Empress Rong stared coldly at Yi Ling, the greed in her eyes exploding once again. "I and His Majesty have owed you far too much over the years. To make up for our guilt, I've decided to have you exchange residences with Luo-er. Luo-er's residence is in the bustling city, much better than this remote place of yours." She said it was a discussion but it was actually a forceful order. How could Yi Ling not sense Empress Rong's true intentions? The cold smile on his lips deepened as he replied indifferently, "Apologies, I prefer a quiet place." "I appreciate your Majesty's good intentions." "Yi Ling." Empress Rong's expression darkened. "You really don't know what's good for you. I'm doing this to make up for what I owe you. Luo-er's residence is much better than this shabby place of yours." The meaning behind her words was that she did all this for the sake of Yi Ling, but it just so happened that this stinking brat Yi Ling didn't appreciate it. Hee. Yi Ling chuckled again and said mockingly, "If you want me to exchange my mansion with Yi Luo, it's not impossible. Everything in my mansion, even a blade of grass or a tree, I'll take it all." Empress Rong's expression changed completely. Since this is an exchange of manners, then everything in the two manners will be included. I'm afraid it's very unreasonable for you to take these things away. Yi Ling smiled. His smile contained a bone-chilling coldness. His slightly raised eyes held a touch of arrogance. Empress Rong, what difference is there between your actions and a bandit's? Aren't you just eyeing the treasures in my mansion and planning to rob them openly? Why do you have to make it sound so nice? How dare you? Empress Rong shouted angrily. Her cold and elegant face flashed with viciousness. You are a prince, and also a subject of the flowing gold kingdom. Do you think that I, the Empress, do not have this little bit of authority? I'm warning you, everything in the flowing gold kingdom belongs to the imperial court. The same goes for the treasures in your mansion. Since these belong to the imperial family, why can't I make the decision? Chapter 177. Her meaning was very clear. All the treasures under the heavens belong to the empire. As the mother of the empire, she has the right to distribute these treasures. Hence, the treasures should belong to whoever she says they belong to. Yi Ling stared disdainfully at Empress Rong, who was acting like a bandit. No one else can lay a finger on my things. Not even the members of the imperial family. Impudence. Yi Luo's handsome face filled with rage when he heard Yi Ling's mocking words. He glared fiercely at the handsome, fair youth before him. Yi Ling, my imperial mother is the empress of the empire, a motherly model of the nation. Who gave you permission to speak to her in this manner? Since my imperial mother has said that this residence belongs to me, you'd better get out of my territory immediately. My place doesn't welcome a bastard like you. The word of bastard made Yi Ling's breath sink. He narrowed his eyes and approached Yi Luo dangerously. What did you just say? I said that you're a bastard. Slap. Yi Ling's hand was as fast as the wind. Before anyone could react, a slap flew towards Yi Luo's face. A clear and melodious sound rang through the entire residence and shocked Empress Rong. She never thought that Yi Ling would have the audacity to hit someone in front of her. You dare to hit me? Yi Luo covered his swollen face as his eyes spat fire. I'm going to tell Imperial Father to send you to the border. You little bastard, you little bastard. I hit you for Imperial Father's sake. Do you think that Imperial Father will send me away for this? Yi Ling retracted his hand and wiped his face with a handkerchief as he sneered. You're talking nonsense. Yi Luo could not help but swear and his face turned a bright red. This little bastard actually said that he had hit me for Imperial Father's sake. Such behavior was utterly shameless. Don't forget, we share the same father. You've called me a little bastard, a little bastard. Isn't that the same as saying that I'm the son of a bastard? You're humiliating Imperial Father in front of me. Do you think that you deserve to be hit? Yi Ling casually threw the handkerchief in his hand onto the ground and stared condescendingly at Yi Luo. Yi Luo became even more enraged. Just as he was about to defend himself, the stunned Empress Rong came back to her senses and slapped Yi Luo across the face. Luo, why did you have to call him a little bastard? If His Majesty hears about this, no one will be able to protect you. Empress Rong said anxiously. Yi Luo felt very wronged, but he knew that he had spoken without thinking. Hence, he shut his mouth and did not dare to say another word. Suddenly, a soft chuckle was heard. Even though the chuckle was extremely soft, it was still clearly heard by everyone. Everyone followed the voice, and in an instant, a snow-white dress appeared in their line of sight. She was slowly walking over, and behind her was a green-clothed maidservant. She was beautiful and charming. It's you. Yi Luo saw Yun Luofeng at first glance and a look of amazement flashed across his eyes. However, when he thought of what this young girl had done to him, his gaze suddenly darkened. She would never forget how this damned slut had humiliated her in front of everyone. Imperial Mother, she's the woman I've been talking about. Yi Luo took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly as he spoke, enunciating each word clearly. Empress Rong was shocked. She turned to look at Yun Luofeng and a hint of jealousy flashed across her beautiful eyes. Chapter 178. No wonder my son could not forget this woman. She was so beautiful. If His Imperial Majesty were to see her, I'm afraid that there would be no place for me in the Imperial Palace. Miss, how should I address you? She remembered the purpose of her visit and no longer cared about fighting Yi Ling for the residence. Her beautiful eyes stared deeply at Yun Luofeng as a sense of contemplation appeared in her eyes. Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng glanced at her from the corner of his eye and spoke unhurriedly. Yun Luofeng, Empress Rong murmured softly as a light flashed in her eyes. She went straight to the point. My main purpose in coming here this time is to see you. Now, I only have one question for you. Do you wish to rise above all others? Yun Luofeng raised an eyebrow, crossed her arms and asked with a smile that did not reach her eyes, what do you mean? I have an opportunity here that can help you rise above others. Empress Rong laughed icily. It all depends on whether you can grasp it. If you do, I can let bygones be bygones for hurting Luo. Oh. Yun Luofeng laughed softly and raised her eyebrows in a demonic manner. I wonder what kind of opportunity this is. Tell me about it. Empress Rong saw the young girl's expression and thought that there was a chance. Her heart leaped with joy and a trace of disdain flashed across her eyes. She had thought that such a beautiful woman would have great strength of character. Now, it seems that she was nothing more than that. She was no different from the women in the brothels. As long as you're willing to listen to me, I can give you to Steward Wu Zhong of Luofeng Pavilion. As long as you can form a relationship with him, your future will be peaceful. Empress Rong raised her chin arrogantly. Her cold and elegant features were filled with disdain as she stared straight at Yun Luofeng. It was as if she was certain that she would seize this opportunity. The little servant girl, Qing Yan, who was standing behind Yun Luofeng, was completely dumbfounded by his words. Did I hear wrongly? Is there something wrong with the Empress brain? She's actually giving the master of Luofeng Pavilion to a mere steward? She even said that this is an opportunity for her miss to rise above others. You mean the steward of Luofeng Pavilion? Yun Luofeng chuckled. I thought it would be someone important. So it's just a servant. Wasn't that right? In the eyes of the true pavilion master behind the scenes, wasn't Steward Wu Zhong just a servant? Unfortunately, Empress Rong would never have guessed that this peerless beauty was the boss of the Windfall Pavilion. If she knew all of this, she would definitely find a hole to hide in and never come out again. Servant? Empress Rong paused for a moment, then laughed abruptly. Miss Yun, could it be that you don't know the great name of Windfall Pavilion? In just half a year, the Windfall Pavilion's name has shaken the entire Flowing Gold Nation, and manager Wu Zhong is a high spiritualist. Even the imperial family's experts have to be courteous when they see him, so he's not a servant. You'd better be polite when you see him. In Empress Rong's eyes, Yun Luofeng must have been ignorant and inexperienced. He didn't know the great name of the Zephyr Pavilion, which was why he dared to boast so shamelessly. Now that she had revealed Wu Zhong's strength, she was sure that this young girl would be overjoyed and throw herself into her arms. At that time, she could use Yun Luofeng as a bridge to establish a relationship with Steward Wu Zhong.